That was that letter that he.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, we're going to get started. It's 6 o'clock. I would like to call to order the FY 26-27 Budget Workshop, number 3. Can I have a roll call, please?
Ms. Ramirez? Mr. Riddle?
Present.
Mr. McBride?
Yes, I hear you.
Ms. Hannah? Ms. Lensing? Ms. Fabian?
Present.
President Rodriguez?
Here. Okay, we do have a quorum. And Ms. Ramirez, are you with us?
Yes, I am. I can hear you.
Very good. Okay, Ms. Ramirez has asked to be allowed to participate in this budget workshop remotely by phone for medical reasons. Can we have a motion to allow her to participate?
Motion.
So
Motion
moved.
by Ms. Fabian, second by Mr. Riddle. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Ramirez? Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. McBride?
Yes.
Ms. Hannah? Ms. Lensing? Ms. Fabian?
Yes.
President Rodriguez?
Yes, motion carries. You are now officially attending the meeting, Ms. Ramirez.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda, public comment. Do we have a sign-up sheet? If not, that's okay. Is there anybody here who would like to address the board? Yes, it is. It is. But I still have to call for public comment just to allow anybody, because there may be people that aren't staying for the meeting and still want to address the board. And public comment is the time to address the board on anything, whether it's on tonight's agenda or not. And tonight, this is going to be a workshop, public workshop, so the public will be allowed to participate and comment and ask questions. Okay? So next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes, and we're talking about the minutes of the June 18th, 2026 Budget Workshop number 2.
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Mr. Riddle,
Second.
second by Ms. Hannah. Any comments, corrections, changes to the minutes? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Ramirez? Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. McBride?
Yes.
Ms. Hannah?
Yes.
Ms. Lensing?
Yes.
Ms. Fabian?
Yes.
President Rodriguez?
Yes, motion carries, minutes are approved, and that was a yes from Mr. Mears. Okay, item 5, reports and presentations. Who will be leading this?
I will get us started. Nicholas, are we going to? So, good evening, Board of Education, stakeholders of Waukegan community. Today, we will be reviewing the fiscal year 2027 budget workshop number 3. We've had couple workshops prior to this one. Is he on or not? Okay, perfect. Yeah, I got it. I was stalling. I didn't know if he was connected. As you know, I was graciously invited to be part of Leading Now, which is a national organization, and we had a convening in Chicago after our budget workshop too, where I met Joseph Trawick-Smith, who presented on fiscal woes in educational districts across the nation. And after our budget workshop, I was really processing what had taken place at our budget workshop, what were some means or areas that we could look at pulling back on so that we could be more fiscally responsible and solvent while ensuring that we are supporting all students' academic endeavors and success. And as a result of that, during my professional development, Joe, I'm just going to call him Joe, presented to a number of superintendents. And a lot of what he touched on were woes that we are feeling in Waukegan public schools, but school districts are also feeling them across the nation. His presentation really landed on me that the board just really needed to hear the national landscape. And so I asked Joe to join us this evening if he would present a shorter version of what he presented us at Leading Now, which he is going to present, and I am going to read his bio before we turn it over to him. I do want to thank him because he is doing this pro bono for Waukegan Public Schools because he really wants us to hit our North Star. And I believe that his insight will help us better analyze and understand where we are and where the nation is and our states, but also give us some ideas on how do we move forward from here. So I'm going to read Joe's bio. Joseph Trawick Smith. Joseph Trawick Smith is a leader with Education Resource Strategies, ERS, where he partners with school districts across the country to strengthen strategic planning, resource alignment, and organizational effectiveness. Prior to joining ERS, he served in district leadership with Tulsa Public Schools, helping lead strategic initiatives focused on improving student outcomes, organizational effectiveness, and the alignment of staffing and resources. Today, he works with school systems nationwide to develop sustainable strategies that maximize opportunities for students. And on that note, I will turn it over to Mr. Joseph Trawick Smith. Thank you, Joe, for doing this for us. We really appreciate it. We can hear you, but it's very low, so I'll let you know once the board can.
Are you able to hear me? I can't hear you. Should I just share my screen from?
Now you're coming through.
Great.
Can you hear us, Joe?
We remove
Thumbs
that.
up if you can. Oh, he can't see me.
Sorry, say again?
Can you hear us?
I can hear you now.
Okay. I'm going to ask the board if we can hold our questions till Joe is done with his.
I mean, what you all are experiencing in Waukegan and some of the external factors that are really being experienced right now by districts all over the country because of a combination of changes that have happened over the last decade or so. So just to kind of kick us off here, for those of you that have been working in public education for a while, you may have noticed that the last couple of budget seasons have maybe felt a bit hard. And you're not alone there. A lot of districts right now across the country are experiencing immense financial strain. You probably can read in the headlines, there are layoffs year after year, again, all over the country. And I think what makes this moment particularly unique is really three things. The first is the magnitude of the financial challenges that districts are facing. So where we may have 10 years ago been talking about budget deficits of 1% to 2%, a lot of the districts I'm working with now are talking 10% or more. So it's just a much, much more significant financial challenge than I think we've experienced really since the Great Recession in 2009. The financial challenge is also, I would say, quite a bit more complex. And that can make it really hard to actually kind of communicate more broadly about what's going on. So just one example that I've encountered a bunch in my work, rising special ed costs. Special ed is an incredibly complicated area of education, and rising costs really stem from things like expanding diagnostic criteria for students with autism, rising salaries, IEP development, we're talking about behavior-based referrals. There's all these things that are at play that don't lend themselves to sort of like a clear and easy explanation. It actually requires a lot of deep digging to kind of understand, like, why are we feeling this financial strain right now? And then uncertainty and risk, especially given some of the federal actions that have happened over the last, year plus. It's just much harder than it ever has been to actually predict how much revenue are we going to have next year? How many students are we going to have next year? So some of the examples I'll share are, when tariffs get put into place and then withheld, that has an impact on supplies and equipment. Immigration policies have had a real impact on student enrollment. Things like this that kind of introduce more chaos into the environment just make it that much harder for school districts to actually be able to say, here's where we're headed financially. And as a result, a lot of districts are having to be more nimble and actually make decisions much later than they typically would have. At the same time, there has been this narrative that I think has been building for a while, the rising costs, falling outcomes narrative, which is in some ways kind of true. Public education spending has been increasing and just recently exceeded $1 trillion, which is, for reference, more than the GDP of most countries in the world. And at the same time, we are serving fewer students, so enrollment nationally is going down, and students are losing ground academically. So we're seeing widening achievement gaps. If you look at NAEP data from the last few years, you'll see that the sort of top performers and the bottom performers, the gap is actually getting bigger between them. There's lots of speculation on why that is. We could have a different conversation about that. But for a lot of people out there that are seeing these trends, it makes it really easy to ask the question, why would we throw good money after bad here? If we're not getting the results for what we're spending now, why spend even more on public education? The reality, and if there are any savvy finance folks in the room there, you'll know that the reality is a lot more complicated than that narrative. And I'm not going to share everything that's on this slide in the interest of time, but just to kind of give you the headlines here, school districts do a lot more than they used to, between sort of intensifying needs that are increasingly diverse, thinking about not just academic needs, but mental health needs, to new expectations for what schools do that were kind of established during the pandemic. Schools are just required, asked to do a lot more than they did 10, 15 years ago. And in a lot of cases without additional resources to do it, which just kind of further puts a strain on school budgets. $1 doesn't go as far as it used to. So those of you that are sort of keeping track of this on a national level, like teacher salaries have gone way up, rightfully, I might add. Teachers who worked during the pandemic, like that is well-earned increase in compensation. But when salaries go up faster than the revenue is coming to the school district, that means that each dollar that's spent goes less far. You can't buy as much for the same amount of funding. And so even if revenue is going up, it doesn't actually mean that you are able to purchase more. And sometimes it means you're able to purchase less. And then lastly, having worked with a lot of school districts over the last 5 years, I can say pretty confidently, like people are tired. The pandemic did a real number on central offices and school teams. And frankly, I think a lot of capacity is depleted. You've seen people leaving the job. Districts are having trouble finding new people to backfill vacancies. And it means that sort of like capacity to make big changes is just not there in the way that it might have been years ago. ESSER, I think, is a really important part of why we are where we are. On the one hand, I personally believe that ESSER was responsible for saving public education as we know it. Like those dollars went mostly to positions that were instrumental in serving students and families during this incredibly difficult time. A lot of districts spent that money on positions, and that was the right way to spend that money. If we're going to recover from this pandemic, we need people to be able to do that work. But at the same time, ESSER did two things that I think made the situation harder in the post-ESSER years. First, because there was all this money flowing into districts, fewer people were really focusing on intensifying financial pressures and the sort of structural deficit. Like costs were rising, recurring revenue wasn't rising as fast. But there was all this other money available to draw from. And so rarely were we having the same type of budget reduction conversations that we might have otherwise. The second is that I have yet to work with a district that fully divested from its ESSER funded positions. I would say in most cases, a lot of ESSER money went towards positions. Some of those positions went away, but a lot of them stayed. In many cases for good reason. They aren't, I mean, this isn't to say that that is an unwise use of money, but what that means is that we're left behind with more positions than we had previously and operating costs that were kind of steadily rising behind the scenes over that same time period, which is just contributes to the financial strain that a lot of districts are feeling now. Not to add to the doom and gloom I've just shared, but there is some reason to be concerned about the future, even more so than folks are now. For those of you who've been in the weeds on the One Big Beautiful Bill and some of the federal policies and legislation that have been coming out, there is, over the next 8 years, going to be a massive transfer of costs to state budgets. So Medicaid is the prime example here. States are going to be responsible for paying even more for Medicaid than they do now. And what that means is that in order to absorb those new costs, states will either need to raise new revenue, reduce Medicaid spending, or find money from elsewhere in the budget. And given the size of education in the state budget, you know, it's not unfounded to worry, will the education budget take a hit when Medicaid costs get transferred to the state? After the 2009 Great Recession, state funding was the funding source that took the longest to recover. It was years before state funding returned to its prior level. And what that means is, like, if this does have an impact, it could be a while before actually state funding can return to the levels that, you know, districts need to actually be able to support kids well. So all of this is to say that a lot of districts are hurting right now. A lot of districts are experiencing significant financial challenges. And that means budget reductions. We all want funding reform. I personally think that there should be a lot more money going towards public education. And yet funding reform takes a really long time and is not a guarantee. So in that context, districts are tasked with making budget reductions to kind of, oh, I think I lost you. Did I lose you?
We're still here, if we're not muted. Oh, we are muted. We're still here.
Still here? Okay, sorry. So with districts now sort of tasked with making these sort of big budget reductions, a lot of the moves that districts resort to are what I call kind of incremental budget reductions. And this is not to say that incremental budget reductions are a bad thing. And in fact, sometimes they are. The only way forward is to make these sort of small reductions in a bunch of different areas. For example, on this slide, you can see central office reductions. That's a one a lot of districts go to because it's the furthest from the kids. And so it stands to reason we should be trying to take money there. Small across the board class size increases. But the problem with these moves is, one, they can be very disruptive. So reducing central office budgets, central office budget usually represents about 7 to 12% of a district's overall budget. You're not going to get a lot from those reductions. And if it's not done intentionally, it can result in, you know, like services not being provided, systems not functioning properly. But the other thing is that all of these things don't actually move the needle. Underlying factors that are making districts have these financial sustainability challenges. A lot of times it's kind of just kicking the can down the road, and then districts end up in the same place the following year. So while it can be important to consider things like what's on this slide, a lot of the real work actually has to do with prioritizing and making some structural changes that impact cost long term. So just to talk through like what I mean by prioritization, and I think you all are going to get into this a little bit later in your sort of regular budget workshop. But what I mean by that is really starting with the question, what are our top priorities as a district? What are we in the business of doing, and what are we in the business of not doing? What are the strategies that we actually think will move the needle on outcomes? And what is the evidence that suggests that's true? Linking those to an actual clear set of evidence-based strategies, whether it's strategies for early literacy, strategies for post-secondary readiness, like actually getting tight on what are the things that we are actually trying to move the needle on student outcomes. Linking that to investments. So then what are the people, time, and money we need to be able to do those things well? And then the other part of that is thinking through what are the resource misalignments, or what are the places where we're spending money that really don't have a meaningful impact on student outcomes. And what does that mean about reduction opportunities? And even as this is a little bit of a sort of simple frame, if you look at the way districts often spend money, a lot of times it is not going towards those things that are evidence-based, that research says like, yes, this actually has evidence that learning will improve by doing this. And so even though it's a difficult exercise, it can be really powerful to sit down and really try to link what you're spending, what's in your budget, to the research on what's good for kids. The other piece of this here is improving financial sustainability long-term actually requires what I'll call sort of structural changes. So this is more significant changes to the way schools are designed and the way services are provided. The big ones I often encounter are master schedules. So actually looking at student master schedules to understand how is time being used? Are we actually providing frequency, duration, and intensity of learning opportunities that students need to be successful? And where we're not, what does that mean about ways that we can kind of reallocate our staff and our time? Special education, really thinking about the design of special education resources to ensure high quality, differentiated instruction and services for students with disabilities. This isn't about reducing the cost of special education. It's about thinking about how those dollars are being spent and making sure there's a through line to, like, again, what research says is good for kids. School size. So as schools get smaller, it becomes both more expensive to operate them. So there's a more of the funding is going to sort of fixed costs, operations, administrative costs, but also makes new resource constraints that makes it harder to provide with all the resources, programs, and course offerings that they need. So thinking through what does a small school look like? How do we think about the trade-offs within a small school? It's increasingly becoming a part of this sort of national challenge. And then lastly, staff compensation, really thinking about the way compensation is aligned to talent needs. So are we putting our money towards those positions that are, the most impactful on student learning? Are we targeting people at stages in their career where they're at the highest risk of leaving the district? like how are we using those compensation dollars to really make sure we're attracting and retaining the best talent? Acknowledging like it's not as simple as just making those decisions. There's a whole process of negotiation, which is incredibly important, but at least going through the work of thinking where should those dollars be invested. So I'm going to close up here. There's no sugarcoat budget reductions. It is hard, and the vast majority of district budgets are in people. So reductions generally mean that positions are reduced. That is the unfortunate reality that a lot of districts are facing right now. Having gone through this process a bunch of times, I can say there are some bright spots to it. It's bittersweet, of course, but it can help actually force discussions about priorities. So as you start entering into a more resource-constrained environment, you really have to think about what's important. What are the things that we are really putting our money towards that we believe will value the children that we serve? It creates some space to reorganize and reallocate, not just reduce. I've worked with a lot of districts who are both mitigating a deficit, but also finding additional money to kind of put toward new things. I recently worked with a district where they reinvested some of that savings in early literacy. So it's important to think about like where are there places that we can dig a little bit deeper and actually shift the way that we're investing money. It can strengthen systems and structures for decision making. It takes a lot of work to make these decisions, and it's a lot of engagement. And going through that process actually can make things stronger and improve the way that we make those decisions. And I can't emphasize this enough. This is the moment to start advocating for funding reform. There's a district in the state I live in that recently used their deficit to take a big swing at advocating for more state funding. And I'm not saying it's successful in every situation, but they were successful. And they secured an additional $60 million really by using this moment, this immense deficit, to really demonstrate to state leaders, like, here is the impact of not fully funding our education system. So I will stop there. I'm happy to answer any questions or just defer to you all on the best use of time.
This is Michael Rodriguez. I'm president of the board. I'm going to direct any questions to you. Do any of the board members have any questions or comments right now? Mr. Riddle?
Well, don't put me on the spot yet. I'm thinking.
Oh, okay.
I'm thinking. Yeah, go ahead.
Ms. Lensing?
Mr. Trawick-Smith, can you go back to that graph where you had district budget and ESSER funding? Can you confirm, is that a generalized graph or one specific to District 60?
Oh, no. That is just a visual to sort of demonstrate the point I was making. It's not specific to you all.
Yeah, so I'll just have a follow-up is how that applies to District 60, because from what I understood, we were doing very well with that regard, but that gives a different picture, in my opinion. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I am sharing purely national context. I've not done any analysis of your district finances specifically.
Ms. Fabian?
So I also saw the funding for Medicaid going back to the states in relation to when we bill Medicaid for special.
The focus of most of our districts in Illinois and the nation, because these are the things that we know we do that cost money. You know, central office costs money. Salary freezes is some way to bring the budget into alignment without actually eliminating positions. Eliminating vacant positions is a little more pain-free than actually rifting people. Deferred maintenance and small across the increasing, the class size. These are things that the districts do, and you're saying these are the easier things to execute, but they're really address long-term sustainability financial challenges. And then when you go to that slide talking about that, your last slide, What are those things? Do we go, I mean, we would first, it would seem to me, we have to do these things in order to balance the budget. And then we could focus on what is education? Education is changing so fast.
Yeah.
And some of the ways it's changing very fast is that, companies are out there selling their products to school districts. They've been selling, this is the best, the best way to educate your kids. This is the electronics. I mean, we've moved into that digital age, which costs money. With the internet and with the pandemic, every child has got a Chromebook now. And so these are all this internet stuff. It's all very costly, yet we're realizing, society's realizing it is causing problems. It's causing some of the attention problems that we have in school, the cell phones now. There's the backlash against that in social media. We can focus on some of those issues as a board, but don't we first have to address these issues, which must be addressed if you're going to have money to continue to operate, especially with the fact that federal government and state is being pressured not to give us more money, but to give us less. So you've set the problem here, but you haven't helped us as a board, it seems, know what to do or where to step forward.
Yeah. Well, let me start by affirming a lot of what you just said. Like, this is not to say that you should not be exploring these areas. And I think in a lot of the districts I've worked in, this has been a part of the short-term solution. I think that the challenge is they keep being the short-term solution becomes the long-term solution. It becomes the next year, same short-term moves. The next year, the same short-term moves.
Right.
There's one district I've worked with for 3 years now, and its class size increases every year. And that is the thing that I think if we want to get as a nation to a financially sustainable place, it can't just be a sequence of short-term moves that effectively just defund schools until there's, very little left. To answer your question, and I do want to caveat, like, I would not propose specific solutions without actually getting deeper into the context over there. But I can share some examples of what I'm talking about when I talk about structural changes. So years ago, I was working in Tulsa Public Schools, which is an incredibly resource-constrained district in Oklahoma. And they were contending these very, very small, very, very expensive elementary schools. And so rather than trying to close a bunch of schools, which they knew was going to be disruptive, they started converting them into Montessori schools. And the reason they did that was because Montessori schools actually have a different cost structure to them. They're multi-age, so you actually end up with a sort of lower need, less of a staffing demand. It has larger class sizes by design, and it's highly popular, so it could end up sort of attracting more families. So when I talk about structural change, I mean things that are more significant about the way that schools are organized, the actual models themselves. The other example I'll share is in Texas, a lot of money has gone towards career CTE pathways. And there are these high schools that have 20 different pathways, which some of which are very under-enrolled. And so a sort of structural move there might be actually redefining what are the pathways that we operate. Let's prioritize, let's combine and redesign what that looks like so that we can do that in a more cost-effective way. So those are just some examples,
Okay.
not specific to you all.
Right, and I do buy into what you're saying. I certainly think that, we're with the budget crisis that is facing our nation, and especially in our schools, and all the multiple of problems that our schools are asked to address. Continuous, as you mentioned in your slides here, we're asked to do more and more and more, but do it now with less. And so we may have to go back and think about what is education. And how do we educate our kids? And the Montessori, as you mentioned, is one way of doing it, which is much less costly because they don't rely on all the electronics. They don't rely on it's more child-centered. And, that's just one solution. I mean, there's one possible way of saving some money and still educating children with the basics of what they do. But it seems to me we still have to deal with the financial, as a school board, we still have to deal with this financial issue and somehow find time also to reevaluate what education is about and how our children learn and how they can form friendships and be in, we're doing a lot of those things. Our teachers know that, you can't teach if the child is not involved, with you socially, with you, so there's that relationship thing that we're realizing is much more important than maybe some of the stuff that we're trying to cram into children's heads and then test and say, that's what's important, that they can read, that we know they're learning. So that, yeah, it's a lot that's being asked of education. And I really like what you've said tonight.
And just to, sometimes when consultants come in and present things, it's kind of like, this is the bad thing to do. This is the good thing to do. Mm-hmm. And I want to just acknowledge, like, it is not that simple. Mm-hmm. And I've been in these conversations. I've ushered in some of these very reductions myself. I think this is going to take a lot of time, and it's going to take years to figure out. Mm-hmm. So I sometimes think it's about the balance of the two. It's like we need to get to a balanced, or at least mostly balanced budget. And we need to be thinking ahead to 3-4 years down the road and thinking about what is that going to look like and how do we start moving towards that now.
Right.
Lenzing and Ms. Fabian.
Board President, we do have a lot of staff here, but we also have some community members, and my concern is making sure that the community can consume or understand the information. So do any of our community members have questions?
That is the plan.
Thank you.
Ms. Fabian.
First, I want to say thank you for presenting the context, because I think a lot of that is lost or not very communicated well. And so just thank you for that, because we are going to have to make difficult decisions. When he's talking about reorganizing schools, I'm sure you've seen a lot of school closures as well. And then again, just having more class sizes, teachers may not, or a higher class size, teachers may not be happy with that. So there are going to be a lot more difficult decisions along the way. And I think we need to keep in the forefront that what he just stated, right? What are our priorities, and how do we make those financial decisions really based on the needs of our community? But the one thing that we kind of glossed over, which I've said before, is also encouraging our community to really talk to the legislators. There are, especially in Illinois, so many unfunded mandates. And when legislators think about these mandates, they think these are great ideas and this is going to work really well for our kids, but they don't think about the cost associated with implementation or the systems and the structure and the time that it takes to create all those protocols. And so I guess my question is, have you seen or worked with a district that has been able to really mobilize their community to like really go out and work with their legislators on, one, obviously funding for our schools, but also looking at what mandates we need to go through that are really causing burdens financially in our districts without, taking away the purpose of that mandate?
Yeah. So before because I want to answer that question directly, but one thing I would add to the sort of advocacy piece here is, big districts get a lot of attention. Chicago gets more attention. And I think part of the path to successful advocacy is districts getting together and actually working together and saying the same things, because it's a lot harder for a smaller district to, independently make that case. And I've seen in some states, like in Ohio, I think it was Ohio, Cleveland was sharing materials with these smaller districts in Ohio to kind of like help them, support them in making the case. One that I would check out is, which is near where I live, Hartford Public Schools in Connecticut. They just recently did a sort of full court press on state funding. And I'm not recommending this, but they basically said we're not going to close our deficit. We've cut enough. We've cut, hundreds of millions of dollars over the last decade. We're done. And that's that's bold. But it was effective, at least this year, in raising attention for some very pronounced state funding issues. So you could look at that. There's a lot of media around that. You can check out. I know Baltimore has done a bunch over the years. So yeah, there are definitely some examples to draw from.
Thank you. Before we move on to the budget presentation, is there anybody else here who would like to make any comment or ask any question of Mr. Trellick-Smith? No? Okay, then I would like to thank you, Mr. Trellick-Smith, for being with us. I know you're doing this pro bono. You're not asking for any payment for what you're doing. And this is really valuable information for all of us because we're in a position where we have to make a lot of decisions and we need a lot of information and a lot of guidance. So thank you for taking the time to spend with us and help us through this.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank
It's
you.
my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank
for
you,
the-
Joe. We'll send you some Waukegan gear in the mail. Represent us well.
Yes.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Bye.
Okay, moving on to the budget presentation,
So, can I just chime in here?
please.
So all of this is part of our budget workshop,
Yes,
right? So we're expanding our learning, what's happening nationally, what districts are struggling, what are some of our same woes, what are some differences we have. Now we're going to get into our budget workshop to look at exactly where Waukegan Public Schools is at the current state. And so at this time, I will turn it over to Ms. Polk and her team.
Thank you. Sure, go ahead, Ms. Anna.
Mic it up.
Mike.
Okay, this has come up in several conversations, and I'm
the baseline recommendation. The directive from the Board of Education was that we would do reductions. It did not give us a value, but we started with a baseline amount of 10 million. If you recall, at that budget workshop number 2, we came in a little bit higher at 11 million, but all of the numbers or the assumptions that we had was based upon a $10 million reduction. Because we have to have a number. We can't just say a reduction. So the district chose $10 million, which is a significant amount of
the
money.
district.
In terms of
administration.
administration, yes.
Right, okay.
Yes.
Not the board.
No,
So
the board
if-
said make reductions.
So if we say make $25 million more reduction,
Then administration would have to look for 25 million more.
okay.
Okay, now I'm going to ask that we hold questions till the
In
end of the
this
presentation.
presentation, you will see a plan on how we are going to close this gap over multiple years. So I'm going to ask if we can refrain from asking questions, if you can write them down so that they could get through the presentation. And then we can go back to slides if you have a question on specific slide, et cetera. Sorry, I'm losing my breath, et cetera, just so that we don't break their thought process as they present. So, Mr. Lattimore? Okay.
Go ahead, Ms. Briscoe. Do we have a microphone for Ms. Briscoe?
So that was a great presentation that Joseph did, but I just want to know, what he proposed, was that considered as a part of the presentation that you're getting ready to do?
I can respond to that, be really quick, Gwen. You're going to see a lot of similarities in here, and you're going to see a plan around structural changes in the future. So yes, you will see evidence of that.
Okay, thank you.
Gwen, did you want to add any more? Okay.
Okay, Mr. Lattimore.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Good evening, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen on the board, and superintendent, staff, community. This is Budget Workshop 3. In approximately 30 days, by 30 September of 2026, we have to adopt the budget. At the end of today's session, we will also take your thoughts, and then we'll refashion if necessary. So we have to have a 30-day review period for the public. Binders will be at front office here and also at Lincoln Center in case the public wants to review the budget. So with that as a backdrop, I'm going to initially take you through what we're going to be doing tonight. We're basically building on Budget Workshop 1 and 2. We're going to provide you an update on ISB data. Ms. Polk, I believe, has an attachment that's been placed into the record. We're going to talk to you about the district's plans to do reductions as you directed as a collective board. There are 7 sections that we're going to be going through. First one, executive summary. I'll be touching on that. The current financial profile. Then we're going to talk about the superintendent's action plan, which will address personnel, contracts, and then operational expenses. We move on to looking at direction, and this kind of addresses something our superintendent spoke to in terms of multi-year planning. Next, the section called Leadership by Example. We'll talk about areas of emphasis stressed by administration. An area, number 6, we have consistently spoken to over the years that since I've returned, financial sustainability. We'll look at academic priorities and also look at reviewing comments that people have provided us as well as the board and incorporating that in our presentation. Then the 7th section, we're going to have some questions for the board, but we're also going to get the feedback. We want to hear what you have to tell us as a collective body. Next slide, please. Tonight's workshop, if I can refer you to that first line, demonstrating the actions administration has taken to respond to the board's direction. That's our North Star. We've done that in 4 phases. Looking at our current financial profile, looking at budget reductions, looking at long-term sustainability, and then looking at a direction to prioritize for the most recent budget that's forthcoming for FY27. Next slide. Thank you. Key updates. Administration continues to look at staffing, operational efficiencies, and non-personnel expenditures. Revenue still remains uncertain. Unlike few states that I've been in, this state, it's kind of, the numbers come as you are literally almost adopting a budget and some afterwards. And then with the uncertainty, as our colleague has spoken to in the national level, there's a lot of uncertainty at the federal level, which affects school districts and also states. Our health insurance is significantly increased, looking at approximately 25% increase in our PPO. And then administration, as always, remains committed to reducing structural deficits. We want to have financial sustainability. Next slide. Administration has continued to refine and update its concepts on savings. We've made significant progress based upon the guidance in the superintendent's direction. We're looking at salaries and employee benefits. You'll see a little slide later with a subnote, but I'm going to stress it just for the purposes of the community who are listening to this. 85% of our budget is people. And with people, it's not salaries, it's also benefits if you combine that. So that's an area we must focus on. We're also looking at collective bargaining discussions. Compliance, we have compliance requirements like IDEA requirements we must deal with. And we also have timelines we have to deal with. So we have to plan in a conscious, deliberate, eyes open fashion in order to address the needs of our students as well as being fiscally responsible. Next slide, please. That's the ground rules. That's where we're going. That's our North Star. That's the direction. I'm going to yield the floor. Mr. Lavosa, you've seen these numbers before. He has some slight update changes. We're going to provide you the current district's financial profile, and then we're going to address the additional sections as we go through. And again, the last section is to provide feedback from you, and then the board, we have some questions, administration has some questions of the board. Mr. Lavosa, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Latimer. Good evening, everyone. If you turn to the next screen. This is what the administration has done since workshop number 2. Completed additional district-wide expenditure reviews, reviewed department budgets for additional reductions, evaluated staffing allocations and vacancies, reviewed administrative staffing structures, evaluated contractual services and agreements, reviewed operational expenditures and discretionary spending, begun evaluating personnel strategies requiring collective bargaining, continued refining revenue assumptions. We're constantly in tune with updating our revenues and developing additional reduction scenarios for the board's consideration. Current revenue expenditure forecast. Now, this is the operating funds. So the operating funds incorporate 4 of our funds: the Education, Fund 10, Operations and Maintenance, Fund 20, Transportation, Fund 40, and Working Cash, Fund 70. There are 5 other funds that are not part of this, but these are the operating funds that provide us our financial profile. We're estimating beginning fund balance as of July 1st, 2026 at $98 million. Estimating revenues, $271 million. Total expenditures, $285 million. A deficit for the current year of a little over $14 million, which would bring down our estimated fund balance from $98 million down to $84 million. All right, we'll go to the, now this schedule is all funds. So the last schedule we had was 4 of the funds. This is all 9 funds. We have a total beginning balance, $89 million. Revenues, $287 million. Total expenditures, $314 million. Deficit for all funds, $27 million. So we're going to, estimating our fund balance is going to go down from $89 million at the beginning of the year to $61.7 million at the end of the year. All right. Expenditures. What causes expenditures to be high? Salaries is number 1. That's about 80% of our budget. Employee benefits, you've already heard that our PPO is threatening to increase about 25% as of January 1st. So health insurance is very, very important. Purchase services, like contractual agencies and that sort of thing. Transportation, whether it be regular transportation, special ed transportation, homeless transportation. Special education, bilingual education, of course our utilities, and supplies. The strategic implications, personnel costs, being that this is our largest expenditure, gives us our greatest savings opportunity. Negotiation through collective bargaining, we do have 6 labor agreements, teachers, office workers, paraprofessionals, psychologists, custodial maintenance, and food service. We have to adhere to strict compliance with statutory timelines, and we have to do some careful planning to minimize negative impacts on student learning and district operations. The non-personnel expenditures, of course, is a smaller percentage, resulting in limited opportunities for savings there. Okay, known factors of revenue assumptions, current property tax assumptions, evidence-based funding estimates. As of this point, Ms. Polk has mentioned to me that we still do not know what our evidence funding is going to be. Usually we start getting evidence-based funding payments starting in August, so pretty soon that's going to come out, and maybe in a couple of weeks we'll know what that is. But right now, we do not know what we're going to receive from the state for evidence-based funding. Federal grant allocations currently available. The local revenue projections. Uncertainties, like I said, the state funding adjustments, EBF. Student enrollment changes. How many students are we gonna increase or decrease this year? Categorical reimbursements. What's going to happen with our categorical grants? Property tax collections. Even though we know what our property tax extension is, that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to receive all that in collections. Grant awards and legislative actions affecting educational funding. All right, we'll go to Section 3, the Superintendent's Fiscal Action Plan, and I will turn that over to Mrs. Polk.
Thank you to my team for briefing the first two sections. If I get tired, they're right there, and they're going to get up and pitch a hit for me. So the superintendent's fiscal action plan. Next slide, please. As you've heard, personnel makes up a large portion of any district's expenditure, and our district is no different. So the priority for us is always personnel and staffing. And then our next highest expense in our district is really purchase services, which encompasses the contracts. And then operational expenses. We've kind of detailed here some explanations under each of those categories. Also, another high dollar area, next slide please, would be facilities and operations. Over the past few years, that has been a focus for the district in terms of repairing some of the things that need to be repaired in our aged buildings. So that's always been a concern, and it has been a concern because we went out for a $30 million bond because we needed to make some corrections to our aging facilities. And of course, instructional programs and just simply financial management. Next slide, please. Okay, so we wanted to really talk about how to do this responsibly, how to make the reductions responsibly. I know that we want to, it would be ideal if we would just cut 30 million or cut 40 million from our budget, but that's just simply not feasible, right? So what can we do as an organization to remain efficient and effective? And that is, we listed a number of things here, and I'll just read those because I think it's important that we focus on them. And those things were considered when we, when the superintendent created her plan, a reduction plan, okay? So first and foremost, you've heard the superintendent repeatedly talk about she's not going to cut anything that's directly related to students. And so that's the first bullet here, protect academic improvement initiatives, okay? Secondly, we want to make sure that we're legally compliant with special ed and ELL and all of the other legal requirements that the district has. Of course, we have collective bargaining agreements, and we cannot violate what's specified in those agreements, so that's a consideration in all that we're doing in terms of making reductions. The statutory timelines in terms of notification of individuals, that has to be considered in making reductions. Also, the safety of our students and staff, that has to be considered. The consultant talked about reoccurring expenses or one-time expenses. Because if we address one-time expenses, it's not going to have long-standing implications on reducing our budget. So we're looking at that as well. But those things that can have an immediate impact, we've considered those. But we placed a greater emphasis on those things that would have a long-standing impact on budget reductions or solvability. Of course, we want to seek out new revenue streams. And then finally, align, and that should really be first, because everything should align with the strategic plan. But we have it on here. It's not necessarily in the order of importance, but everything that we do, we obviously want to align it with the plan that was submitted by the superintendent to the Board of Education. Next slide, please. So we're going to go through these slides relatively quickly because these slides really speak to what we just talked about, right? It's just giving more details to it in terms of the largest potential savings will come from personnel. This is a tough area, a tough decision for everyone. But we spoke about this at the last board meeting. The superintendent did, and I came in briefly and made some comments. But we know that 80 to 85% of our expenditures really come from personnel. Okay, that's known, and we're not unlike districts across the country. Or even profit organizations. That's just what it is. So you're not only talking about salaries, but you're also talking about benefits. So you're talking about total compensation. Okay. But we also know what's highlighted in this second bullet, that this has to be done strategically and carefully, right? Because you don't want to impact operations. So that's why it has to be analyzed. You have to talk about it, meet on it, see what the needs of the students are, and make decisions not merely because you're possibly overstaffed, but because it's based upon our unique needs within Waukegan Public Schools. And then, of course, we also have to look at what the board has directed the superintendent to do, and that is to reduce the budget as best we can so that we're financially sound. Next slide, please. But in making those decisions, we also have to look at contract language. We have to look at state and federal laws in terms of making those changes. It requires the district to have conversations, not only among ourselves, but to also have conversations with the unions. Okay? Next slide, please. That's why we're all here. We're all here for the academics, right? We're here to educate our students. That's why we're here. And so that has to be a very important aspect while having conversations about how we're going to manage the reductions in the district. It's just not write a check, it's over, we're just gonna do it. No, it's not that simple. I wish that it was, but it isn't. We have to look at all of the factors. We have to look at Why the whys? Why are we spending that money? What is the impact? What is the return on investment? All of that has to be looked at before just simply making cuts. We could look at another district that is perfect, that's ideal, but we're a unique district that have to make decisions based upon what is happening in Waukegan. Next slide. Enrollment, student needs, and service requirements must guide our decisions. I took a look at where we are in terms of our evidence-based funding. Remember, we started out, we were like 56% adequacy. Our district is now 74. I kind of sighed when I saw that, because I feel like the closer we get to adequacy, the less increase we're going to get, because that means we're getting more and more money that's getting us to the max of what our district should be receiving. I understand that the enrollment levels are going down, but I also know that the enrollment levels in other school districts across Illinois are also going down. So hopefully, I don't want to be tier one. I don't think any of us want to be tier one, but we kind of like being tier one because we get more money. Tier one in the school districts get a larger part of the pot, okay? So we have to consider all of these factors when we're making reductions to the budget. Next slide, please. Contracts, commitments. That's why I work very closely with Ms. Vanderbroek, and we ensure that all contracts have a termination clause in it. Without having that termination clause in there, it could be huge penalties that we would have to pay to get out of the contract. So we make sure that those clauses, that's why she reviews those. She's very good at it. She reviews it to make sure that that language is included. Conversations are had, they have been had regarding contracts and what are the benefits to the district for continuing with those contracts. Those discussions have been had, and I believe that they're going to continue to be had. We're looking at those to see if there's potential savings, reduction of services and/or elimination. Next slide, please. So we can't just look at just the expenditures. We have to look at our revenue. And there's so much uncertainty at this moment regarding how much we're going to get in revenue. Mr. Lattimore mentioned that, I believe it was Mr. Lattimore, Mr. Luosa mentioned that we don't know how much we're getting in evidence-based funding. We simply don't know. We know that we're getting less in transportation, special ed reimbursements. We used to get about 80%. Now we're getting about 60 to 65% reimbursement. That's huge. I'm periodically getting emails from Dr. B regarding what's happening with Medicaid, and so it's not promising. So we have to make decisions based upon assumptions. We always make sure that what we're proposing to the superintendent is not extremely optimistic, right? Because we have to be very careful in our assumptions. And so based upon what the assumptions that we're making in terms of revenue, that drives what happens with the expenditures, okay? So all of those considerations have to be made. Next slide, please. So as you can tell, this is not an easy endeavor. It's complex. There's no one answer. There's no absolute answer, especially now because it's so many unknowns, but we look at trend data. We look at what is happening nationally, as the consultant said, in order to make the best estimates in Waukegan. Sustainable reductions. It does the district no good to make reductions today, only to add them back tomorrow. And so we want to make sure that what we are proposing, we want to make sure that what we're proposing to you is sustainable, that it's not going to come back unless, it's something that's absolutely critical. That's why one-time reductions are not ideal when you're trying to have long-term implications or ramifications. Next slide, please. So we wanted to just create a list of the highest priority areas that we're looking at, and also those areas similar to what the consultant stated, that has the greatest impact in terms of reducing, and I don't want to call it a deficit, but current year deficit. It's not an overall deficit, but current year deficits, okay? And of course, you see what's on the top of this list, staffing. But we also wanted to put on here, right? You know that if we deal with staffing, it's going to affect service, okay? Anytime you reduce staffing, it's going to affect service, okay? And the superintendent is looking at this diligently to ensure that what services are going to be impacted by the recommended reductions is not going to hurt the district. But we have to acknowledge that it's going to have somewhat of an impact, okay? Organizational structure, we talked about that several times. We have to plan. You can't just do it, right? You got to plan. Contract review, equipment delay in purchases because of, trying to save some money. Some things are going to be delayed. So we have to be aware that the decisions that we're making today, we have to make today, that there are some drawbacks. It is, but it's so much more positive than there are drawbacks, but we have to mention those, okay? So at your leisure, you can continue to look at this slide, but we try to provide information for you. Next slide, please. Of course, anytime you start having these type conversations, what are your guiding principles? Why are you doing it? Okay? Strategic plan alignment. Everything flows from the strategic plan. All right? That's your map. That's your roadmap. Legal compliance, financial sustainability, equity, operational efficiency, and of course, risk, safety, right? And so there is a number of questions, and these are only a few. It's not all encompassing, but a number of questions that were asked in going through this process. I with Mr. Luosa and other staff members were in the back room there with the superintendent as she had conversations with principals and department heads. And some of these questions, they may not have been phrased this way, but in essence, they were asked of the individuals regarding the importance of what they were asking for and to justify those expenditures. And plus, we had 2 board members that were in the room, Ms. Fabian and Mr. McBride. Next slide, please. So there were a number of directives that were given to the superintendent from the Board of Education. And this entire presentation was intended to address board member concerns and/or to answer questions that may have been posed from the audience or community. There's limited capacity for new initiatives. If we start something new, obviously something else would have to be reduced, or we would have to decide to deficit spend. And that's all due to fiscal constraints. And so I'm going to read this slide because I think that this slide is extremely important. And that is because fiscal constraints greatly restrict the district's capacity to initiate new programs or enhance existing services. So as a result, the district will refrain from launching new initiatives until such time as a notable improvement in its financial condition, or if such initiatives are considered critical for ensuring student success or safety. And that was emphasized by the superintendent, and that's due to fiscal constraints. And of course, everything is evaluated based upon sustainability. If we can't continue to do it, then it doesn't make sense to start it. Next slide, please. What is our roadmap, Mr. Riddle? Multi-year financial recovery strategy. What is that? Why? The guiding principle. And we kind of went over that just a few minutes ago, but we want to go through the strategy over and over again. The more we say it, right, the more it sinks in for us, and then also for those who are listening. And that is, we want to protect student achievement. We intend to reduce the structural deficit, align staffing with student needs. That was stressed in Budget Workshop 1. Increase revenue opportunities, maintain fiscal responsibility, and then finally demonstrate leadership. And I believe that we've done that throughout our presentations to the Board of Education. But this presentation tonight from the superintendent is intended to highlight the things that she and her staff has done to show leadership in regards to financial stability. Next slide, please. What is the objective of the budget reduction strategies? 3 things, although it's always more, but we wanted to highlight these 3 things. We want to reserve the fund balance or the cash balance, and that has been spoken loud and clear from the board lectern. We want to disruption avoidance. We said that multiple times. You don't want to cut something and then the district can't operate. I mean, we just need to do it in a strategic, intentional, transparent way, ensuring that operations continue. And then structural alignment, right? We want to make sure that this is something that we could sustain, not just in 27, but 28 and beyond. Okay, so those are the 3 guiding principles or the objectives for why we're going to present the budget reduction strategy. Next slide, please. So we wanted to talk about what we were going to do, are proposing to do. Excuse me, if I say what we're going to do, you know I'm saying propose to the superintendent is proposing it to the Board of Education, okay? So it was a request from the board, a board member, that we create a strategy that extends beyond 27. And so what is being presented tonight is going to be a plan that extends to 2030. So in the current year, which is the first year of this strategy or this plan, we want to stabilize operations. And so, Ms. Hannah, there's your $10 million. No, the Board of Education did not tell us $10 million, but we needed to put a number. We couldn't just reach, because when we're doing goals or aspirations, we have to have a number. And so the administration chose $10 million because we believed that we could reach that milestone. Okay,
Right,
if
but it's not scratching the surface of deficit, annual deficit.
Yes, ma'am. And so later on in the presentation, we're going to address that. And then, of course, at the end, if the Board of Education has additional questions for the superintendent or concerns, then certainly you can ask those questions. But this presentation deals with $10 million, the assumption of a $10 million reduction in the current fiscal year. In 28, we're going to talk more about those numbers. I won't quote them here, but you're going to see it in the next few slides. But the key initiative is staffing alignment, okay? We couldn't do it all the first year, but we have more time to assess it and make strategic decisions for 28. And then financial optimization. So operational efficiencies in 29. So when we go from 27 to 28 to 29, we're not forgetting about the key initiatives that's in the preceding year. Those things will continue, but we're adding on, right? Because you can't do everything in one year. You have to tackle some high, low-hanging fruit, I would say. That's what we say in the business office. You know, tackle those things first, and then we reach up and get other things. And so the stabilized operation is going to go into 28, 29, and 30. It doesn't go away. It's just that we're adding staffing alignment, and then we're going to add operational efficiencies, okay? We're going to continue to look at those things. And then, of course, in 2030, we're hoping to be structurally balanced. And so, and then sustain operations, continue to look at those things that's giving us the greatest return on investment, continue to look at, you know, how we can best right size, right align with the strategic plan in terms of staffing, contracts, everything that we're spending in the district. That is the goal. Okay, next slide, please. So now we're going to look at year one, give a little bit more information about what the plan kind of looks like. Okay, so in year one, we stated that the focus was to stabilize operations. And so the key actions, those things that, and again, it's going to be more things that the superintendent is going to look at, but we can't put all of it on a slide, right? So those key things that we're going to focus on is that $10 million, unless the board says something different, but 10 million, that's what we've been focusing on. And then evaluating reductions. Wherever those reductions, we can find them, we're looking for them, and we're trying to cut those things if there's no return on investment. All right, having those conversations. It's not going to be a one-time conversation that was had when we developed this budget, but those conversations are going to be ongoing with the schools and also the departments. Reviewing staffing contracts and operational efficiencies. We're currently, Mr. Moten is leading a negotiations right now, and then soon we're going to be in negotiation with other groups. All of those things are going to be considered because we're looking at it. What can we do? What can't we do? Okay? And then new revenue opportunities. I see your face, Ms. Hannah, so when we get to the end, you can ask your questions. So what is it that we expect to see at the end of year one? A reduction in our reliance on the fund balance. That's what the superintendent has been asked to do. And so reducing, whether it's 1 million, 2, 3, 4, or what we're looking at 10, you're still reducing your reliance. It may not be to the magnitude that one would want, but you are making some progress towards your reliance on your fund balance. Next slide. Year 2. We said structural alignment. All right, we're going to have a little bit more time to look at staffing, workforce reorganization and adjustments. I mentioned about the collective bargaining. We're going to align staffing levels with student enrollment and financial realities. Okay, a lot of this, as I stated, we talked about in Budget Workshop 1. We're going to continue contract reviews, operational efficiencies, and we're going to continue to maximize our grants, okay? And so hopefully, again, it's going to reduce our structural operating deficit to some degree. It may not be all of it. I keep saying that. It may not be all of it, but we're working to reduce the current year deficit. Next slide. Year 3. Financial optimization. We want to continue looking at operations, the efficiency. We're going to evaluate the impact of what we did in 27, the impact of what we did in 28, and what gains or losses we had in terms of what we did. One of the things that I do want to mention is this. The budget is a living document. It's not something that we write, put it on the table, and it just stays stagnant. No. Right now, as we mentioned to you, we don't know what the revenue is going to be. If the revenue goes up, then we adjust upward. If the revenue goes down, then we have to adjust downward. We're simply making assumptions and estimates based on historical data. So we have to be disciplined in our spending, all right? We have to evaluate the programs, talk about it constantly. What gains are we making? Are we making any gains? If one school is making a gain with a particular program, can we spread that across the other schools? Can we consolidate contracts? All of those things, all of those discussions must be had. And so at the end of the day, we want to close the gap between the revenue that we're getting in the current year and the expenditures, right, that we're expending in any given year. And then in year 4, we hope to see that the gap is almost gone, if not gone, in year 4, all right? So that's where long-term sustainability, it's okay, we've gotten there now. We've made all of the necessary adjustments in our budget now. We want to make sure that from that point forward, we're continuing to be diligent, we're continuing to monitor, we're continuing, and I want to say this too, it's not as though that has not been happening, it's just that in the climate that we are in, the fiscal climate that we're in, the uncertainty that has happened, we just have to be harder. We have to work harder. And you heard the consultant talk about Waukegan, and we've said that multiple times before. Waukegan is not unique in this, right? We're not unique in this, but we have to contend with it now. And so we want to maintain structurally balanced operations. We want to hear what the board has said and address that strategically. And at the end of it, we want to establish a sustainable financial model that minimizes our reliance on the reserves. And you've heard that minimize the reliance on the reserve in all 4 of the years, 27, 28, 29, and 30. Okay? Next slide. So this is just restating what we said before. So I won't go through this, just give you a moment to look at it, because again, we want to keep putting it there so you can see what the focus is for the superintendent. Next slide, please. Okay, here we go. So, what is the impact of the $10 million, the cuts, the reductions, the avoidance that the superintendent has been briefing the board? So we're projecting, this is the unaudited amount. We're projecting that the fund balance coming into '27 is going to be that $89 million. Again, this is unaudited, so until the auditors come in and do our independent audit, this is what we estimate that balance to be, okay? The other thing that I want to mention before I proceed with this is this includes all 9 funds. Okay, but you know all 9 funds doesn't speak to the district's health. The district's health only looks at the education fund, O&M fund, transportation fund, and working cash fund. The working cash fund has no expenditures in it, but the working cash fund operates as a bank for us. We can loan, borrow money from it to ourselves, okay? And so where you see the majority of the negative balances in would be the TARD fund, which is not a part of the district's health, and then also capital projects, which is also not a part of the district's health. That's why when Mr. Luosa was briefing before, you saw a larger fund balance in the operating funds than you did in overall funds, okay? So this 89 million is across all of the funds, including those funds that really doesn't impact your financial health. We're just trying to tell you how much we believe is going to be in the bank at the end, was at the bank at the end of 26, going into 27. So what are our assumptions for 27? All right? We assume, based upon the requests that we got, that the revenue, the revenue, our assumption for revenue is $287 million. Okay? That's pretty much in line with the assumptions that we've made in previous years. Okay? We believe that the growth in our revenue is going to be about $8 million, and that growth is going to come primarily from 2 sources. You already know, evidence-based funding and property taxes, okay? So we believe that if it holds true for what we've been getting in the previous years, we're going to get upwards of about $6 million or so in evidence-based funding and about $2 million or so in property taxes. Now, again, we don't know what that number is right now. We don't know what our allocation is going to be, but if we look at trend data, it's pretty close to it. I had Mr. Luosa look at how much we are giving to Learn Charter School of our allocation. So if you happen to go out there and see that Waukegan is getting close to $180 million in evidence-based funding, and you say, why do you have in your budget documents only, 171 or 170? Why would you have that? That's wrong. No, it's not, because they calculate the entitlement for all of Waukegan Public Schools. But if you remember, when Learn Charter Schools submitted an application to our school district, and then we won it, they went to the state. And then, so now the state approved the charter school. And so before we even get our allocation, they subtract for Learn Charter School.
How much?
About 9 million, isn't it? About $9 million. So when you see that number, we're not getting all of that. We're entitled to that in Waukegan Public Schools, but because those are Waukegan Public Schools students, Learn Charter School gets it off the top from the state. Okay, so our assumption is we possibly are going to get only about 6 million, little over 6 million, and maybe 2 million in revenue and property tax. Thanks to the board agreeing after 6 years, Ms. Hannah, don't get mad at me, to raise the taxes. That's how we're getting this additional revenue. So local property taxes and evidence-based funding, those are our major two sources of revenue. We have categorical aid, but that goes up and down, and so we really don't rely as heavily on those two sources, okay? What are our expenditure assumptions? Well, we're projecting, based upon the requests from across the district, that our expenditures are going to be about $314 million. Okay, you look at those two numbers across from each other. You see 287 and as revenue, and you see 314 in expenditures. Those are drivers, okay? So the largest driver here is its salaries. So the base amount is 184, I'm rounding, all right, million in salaries of that 314. So we estimated that it's about a 3% increase across all positions, all right? Overall, the salary is going to go up about 3%.
Why not two?
We made assumptions. We made assumptions in the numbers. And so 3% overall, it's not individualized, it's not one group, right? On average, it's 3% increase. And over the 4 years, we use the same thing, 3%, right? Just so that we can make some assumptions. And then the adjustments for the scenarios was the details that we presented to you before in Budget Workshop 2. And then we're going to provide more data tonight for additional reductions that we found. And so the reduction scenario, I want to go to the next slide. This is going to be shown by itself on the next slide. So if you would go to that. So this is the numbers. Remember, we said we would go over the numbers. We just talked about what the key focus was going to be, but these are the reductions in those years that we're going to propose tonight. So for year one, there's that $10 million, all right? In year two, it's 25 million because we're going to have that 10 million that's going to be reoccurring reduction in that second year. So we're going to have $15 million more in cuts. So 10 this year in 27, 15 million in year two, which is a $25 million reduction. Then in year three, 5 million. Which would be 30 million if it's compounding, right? So 30 million, and then hopefully we're stabilized in year four, no reductions. Because remember, along the way, we're making reductions, we're revising strategies, we're looking at priorities. All of that's happening across the years, all right? So it's probably going to be savings beyond what we're making assumptions on right now. So we're saying if we're just looking at new reductions, it's 10, 15, 5, and 0. Okay? Next slide, please. what does that look like? What, you know, we ran the scenario. What is that going to look like? So the unaudited 26 reserve balance, as we've said, is about 89 million coming into 27. And in 27, we're believing that the operating deficit is going to be 27.3, assuming all what we have requested, that 300 and something million dollars. Then we're going to have a reserve that goes down to 61.8. In 28, because of the additional 15 million and then the reoccurring 10, we're projecting that the deficit is going to be 9.2. Okay? So our reserve balance is going to go down to 52.6. In 29, with the $5 million reduction, which took recurring up to 30 million from the previous years, we're believing that the deficit is going to still be 1.1, leaving a reserve balance of 51.5. And then with no cuts and for 2030, we believe that we're going to have a surplus of 6.1, which brings our estimated reserve balance to 57.6. Give you a moment just to look at that. So you see 10, 15, 5, and 0 across the top is what we're proposing tonight as a reoccurring reduction plan. Next slide, please. So we want to kind of talk about what has happened thus far in terms of reductions and avoidance strategies. I know that, I think you had that question last time, Ms. Lenzink, about avoidance strategies, because we know that maybe when we made the budget recommendations to you before, it did not have certain costs in there in terms of positions. But we need to highlight the fact that if we're closing vacancies, it is avoiding additional costs that could impact the district. So we wanted to include that in the presentation. However, it's not a reduction of the estimates that we had previously given, okay? That's the difference between the two. Next slide, please. Budget Workshop 2. You will recall that the departments within the district reduced their budgets by $5.3 million. That was presented to the Board of Education. And the areas that reduced are shown here, okay? We had to do a slight increase because I needed to add, it was my omission, I didn't have HR in there, so I had to add 241.5 for HR. So that's how that number got to 5.3. It was the same number that we presented in Budget Workshop 2. Okay. Next slide. So at Budget Workshop 2, it was we presented about 8 million that we were giving the schools. And so we had another $215,000 savings that we're presenting tonight. So it brings the allocation that went to the schools down to 7.6 million. And I know it's small to the right, but it was simply there to show you that the schools were given an allocation, and at your leisure, you can actually make it larger and see it, okay? So the savings on this particular slide is the $818,000 plus the 215, so a little over $1 million from the schools. And let me say this, there were additional reductions that were made prior to Budget Workshop 1 and Budget Workshop 2, but these are the reductions that came as a result of the superintendent meeting with the departments and the schools, okay? Next slide, please. So this is the slide for you, Ms. Lindsay. We wanted to highlight the differences between avoidance savings and actual position savings, okay? So I put a note at the bottom that a segment of the unfilled positions that did not have individuals in them in '26 and were not included in the initial projection for salaries are considered cost avoidance, okay? So those positions that had a body in those positions and they were included in the budget projection that we presented to you, those are considered reductions. So you'll note this information mirrors. There may have been slight revisions based upon people who have resigned. So some adjustments were made in terms of how many positions are filled and how many are vacant. But it was pulled as of late, right? So it may have been some slight modifications. So the counselors, 39 positions that were filled, 4.6 of those positions are vacant. So 42 positions needed. So the superintendent is recommending 2 of the vacant positions and no filled positions, okay? So those 2 counselor vacant positions, which is considered cost avoidance, would be $209,000. So that's how you read this, unless you want me to go through it line by line. That's how you read this. So if you drop down to the safety officers line, you'll notice that the safety officers are at the top in the cost avoidance, and they're also at the bottom for reduction. And it's based upon my explanation just a moment ago, okay? You have 74 filled safety officers. You have 10 of positions that are vacant, right? 74 positions that are needed, okay? So 7 of the vacant positions at the top are cost avoidance. That means nobody was in those positions. 3 vacant positions now had 3 people in those positions. So that means that it's a reduction. When I did the initial projection, 3 of the 10 vacant positions had individuals in it. So that's a cost reduction. 7 were vacant, so it's cost avoidance. 0 filled positions in both instances are impacted by this recommendation. So based upon those 10 positions, 7 of them being cost avoidance, the value of that is $257,000. The reduction, however, is $108 for those 3. So that's the methodology that was used throughout all of the positions that are listed here. And so the avoidance equates to 1.8 million, and the reduction equates to 1.4. I want to pause here just in case. I know that you said wait, but we probably need to ask questions here.
Mr. Riddle, then Ms. Lindsay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that I can understand this, I understand the reduction because that's going to happen every year,
Yes.
okay, in the safety officer that you're showing. But the cost avoidance, are you actually considering that as savings this year or next year, or not at all? Just to
No,
show
not
the
at all,
difference?
just to show.
Just to show the difference of what an avoidance is, a vacant position versus, because normally we're going to hire somebody to fill those vacancies.
That's
It might
right.
be, a few weeks or a few months, but you're going to hire somebody and somebody might quit and you got somebody hired again. So it's just,
But not anymore.
okay.
You're avoiding filling those positions. So because nobody was in there last year, I did not include them in the projections. And so to eliminate or to close those vacant positions means that it would never be a cost, because I typically do not do an estimate based on filled positions. I might put a contingent to the side for possible new positions or filled positions, but I don't really budget for all of the vacant positions. If I did, we would be bankrupt. We just can't, because there's so many vacant positions, right? So these are positions that will never, conceivably, never be filled. So as a result of those positions not being filled, I can't say that it's reducing the budget because they weren't in it. But because she's closing it, we save, and not filling it, we're saving 1.8 million.
And that's continuing then?
Yes,
Okay, so it's not like we're saving it just for one fiscal year, we're saving it
Yes.
because it's closed.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right, I got you now.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Lindsay?
I'm going to be as respectful as possible,
Yes.
but still direct.
Yes.
The math ain't mathing for me because you have the positions needed. And I'll give you an example.
Okay.
Psychologists.
Yes.
Positions needed 22 and a half.
Uh-huh.
We have 5 vacant positions. So, and we are reducing those 5.
Uh-huh.
So then that tells me we are 2.5 over the positions that we need.
Yes.
Okay. So we're overstaffing that. Can you help me understand why that decision was made?
We were aware, and I don't know if you want Ms. Maluski to come, but we were aware, that was acknowledged on the presentation that we were working with internally. So that was a strategic decision. So I don't know whether, Superintendent, you want Ms. Maluski or Dr. B to come and address that.
I'm going to ask Ms. Maluski to come in. I'm sorry, I had to run to the restroom really quickly, and I'm going to catch up once I hear her speak. So I'm sure I will be able to chime in.
Good evening, Board President, Superintendent, members of the board, community, and colleagues. Knowing that we had staff already in seats and in those positions, to reduce those after April, when the reduction in force is due every year, we were unable to meet that time frame. And so if we do need to continue reviewing our enrollment and our caseloads and our staff levels for psychologies as an example, we want to make sure that we look at that according to the RIF timeline for teachers, which is a different timeline for paraprofessionals.
Okay. And so for our counselors, we have 39 filled, we need 42, we have 4.6 vacant. So then that means if we're reducing that by 2, we have 2.6. So 39 plus 2.6 is less than the position that we need by 0.4.
Sure. So, sorry, I want to make sure I look at the chart the same way that you're looking at it. So just bear with me for a moment.
For
so
sure.
I can make sure the math is going across. So we currently do have 39 counselors. We have 4.6 vacancies across all of our different programs. 42 is the average, dividing the caseloads out so that we have the caseloads at the approximate size according to our contract. Reducing it by 2, we would be at 40. Reducing it by 2, we would have a 2.6 vacancy. Is that what you were saying, Ms. Lensing? I'm trying to make sure that I'm following this. Okay. And then, so yes, we do need 42 vacancies. We do need 42 positions overall, I'm sorry.
So then that's short by 0.4 employment.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, say again, Ms. Quinn.
We have
Sure, we also have contractual services that are there, and so we wanted to make sure that we didn't impact current staff that were already in seats. And again, it was a similar process to our psychologists, and so when we do look at caseloads and enrollment and staffing levels in the upcoming year, depending on if we feel we need to do any other reductions. That may be another area where we need to either maintain vacancies, continue posting, or potentially look at a reduction if the numbers call for that. But again, they are part of the teachers group, and so that those timelines are different according to the April guidelines.
My point here is that instead of reducing by 1.6 to match the positions needed, we are going to understaff what we need.
Many of the positions at counselors, like our elementary schools, those are also including our social emotional counselors from that we rely on in terms of contracted services as well. And so we want to make sure that we're not removing services. And we do have schools that share counselors across caseloads. So it's not a full FTE at a certain specific school, and they share positions as well, like small schools do.
The other component that I want to talk about, because last week's meeting, there was a big showing of the community with regard to some of our paraprofessionals and, in their eyes, direct student supports being eliminated. If we go down to the budget reduction section for DL specialists, it looks like we are reducing that section. And Ms. Fabian had specifically asked, and I believe multiple board members were concerned about the diverse learner department.
Okay, yes.
This is now showing we are taking 5 staff out of their positions.
These diverse learner specialists do not work directly with students. They're case managers for IEPs and paperwork and making sure that we have compliance with LEAs and all these different aspects of running IEP meetings. Based off of an analysis with Dr. Bulblitz and his team, we are looking at reassessing how we're organizing the schools. And how those caseloads are managed. And so these, although they do work in the diverse learner department, they are teachers. They do not have a direct caseload of students. They manage IEPs and IEP meetings to make sure we're in compliance. And Dr. Bulblitz has a plan to reallocate the current people who will remain in the positions to make sure that those services and supports that they provide are still in place.
My consistent concern with a lot of these support staff positions is to make sure that I understand we're looking at budget cuts, and that includes personnel. But my concern has always been, what is their caseload and what is their ability to manage that caseload? Are they getting all of the things done? I'm not gonna lie, it is concerning that we think that that can be managed. Because especially when we get into special education, that comes with a lot of legal fees, which I noticed is not been a component of the presentation, which I'll ask a follow-up question on later. But that's my concern, is that reducing, especially when we're talking about IEP meetings and the case management, is that something's going to fall through the cracks. We've had parents from the community come up and talk at this podium since I've been on the board, I'm sure definitely since Ms. Hannah's been on the board, that their students aren't getting the services that they need. So this is an area of concern for me. I don't know if it's for the full board. I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Thank you for your questions.
Back. Did the district send out a text message on that? Because if not, I told them, don't touch it.
Yeah.
Because that's very unusual
Yeah.
way to
I'm
communicate.
I'm looking at Mr. Figueroa, and he's stating no text message went.
Both. Good evening. We send emails to their district email and their private email on record when they did their onboarding, plus correspondence through the U.S. Postal Service. We did not send any text messages.
Okay, well, I think, Superintendent, something needs to go out to the staff. Don't touch those text messages because it may be a scam.
So I will look into it. I do know that the para-union president has been sending out communication to his union members. I don't know if that's part of it, so.
Saying that they're not coming back.
I don't know. I don't know what the communication said. I'll look into your statement, Ms. Hannah, and I will circle back with the board. But however, if communication went out on representation as it was from the district, we will get something out early tomorrow morning. So Angel, Nick, if you can start looking into that for me, please.
Oh, yeah, I have another question.
No, you addressed my concern, because I was going to say that the communication may have not come from HR, but may have come from their union or their admin. So it still needs to be looked at.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Paul.
Also, Ms. Hannah, if you have someone who does have that text message, and if they could forward it to you, if you could forward it to Nick or myself, that would help a lot.
Next slide, please. And so here you go, Ms. Hannah. Administrative considerations. At Budget Workshop 2, we presented to you $753,000 worth of administrative reductions, and that was increased by $375,000, equating to $1.1 million in administrative staff considerations. The list of those positions are here for you.
Are these positions that were presented to us early on that were vacant, these positions were vacant already? And is that what these are?
Some are. This is the total of all administrative positions. So some were, like the Director of Student Access and Achievement. We know that Dr. Fields took another role in another district. The 2 assistant principals would be a no. There's other ones in here that, no, they're not. They were filled,
not what?
they were filled positions. Yeah.
Okay, so,
And some were consolidated.
Mm-hmm. I do want the board to know that you do have this presentation now in your email, so if there are any other questions, once you have time to sit and process and look over it on your own time, we can respond to those also. Go ahead, Ms. Pope.
All right, next slide, please. And so we wanted to give one slide that would put it together so you could see it. Stipend savings that we recognized is $426,000. We have a target of $2 million that the superintendent is going to review to ensure that the historical $15 million in supplemental pays that we're paying is reduced by $2 million. And so the total potential savings is for supplemental pays, not the base pays or compensation that way, is 2.4, I'm sorry, almost $2.5 million.
And this is a new slide in comparison to the last workshop that the deck you've seen.
Yes.
going back.
Are we finished?
With this one. We're not done.
We do, we have more. If you give us probably another 5 minutes, we can get through them. So
Yes.
go ahead, Ms. Pope.
Okay, next slide, please. Hold on. All right. Of course, the sale of 742 Greenwood is going to yield about $577,000, and then that's the actual receipts, and then cost avoidance because of utilities is the $23,000. So it's going to equate to about $600 and $500 in savings. Okay, next slide. Because of the recently negotiated food service contract, we believe that it's going to be an estimated savings of about $230,000. Of course, we want to make sure that you understand that it's contingent upon usage, but right now, based upon the contractual estimates, it's about $230,000 savings.
What does that mean?
Because how many meals are served? We're charged for the number of meals served.
Well, I know that, but what I don't know is if we're contracted per the meals.
That's right, we're contracted per meal cost.
Right.
And then we had an estimate of the number of meals that will be served. So the estimated value of the contract was the $8,061,000. But for some reason, if we serve more people, then
Or
it could be
less.
higher or less. It could be less. Okay, next slide. Next slide, please. So, this is one I think the superintendent loves. I don't want to speak for you, but this is one that you've been looking at repeatedly, and that is recent savings over the last few years from 23 to 26, and then, of course, for 27, what is her goal? You'll see that the swag and spirit as well as the staff food has gone down over the years, and she's going to continue to monitor that with staff to ensure that the levels don't increase over what it was in 26. When you look at overtime, you'll see that that has fluctuated over the years, but she's proposing that it's a 60% reduction in overtime, which would be about $1 million savings there. Next slide, please. So in total, if we've captured all of the amounts that are on the slides in terms of cost savings and cost avoidance, and then the sale of the Greenwood building, she's cut about $14 million of potential or actual costs.
And so when we look at this, as Ms. Polk said, the budget is fluid, right? So if we receive more students that need diverse learner services with IEPs, that could increase paras. The failure for the sale of 74-2 Greenwood to go through could mean that we don't get the 577. So we have to know that a lot of these variables are predicted on other variables. And so it is fluid, right? So this is what we're calculating now, but we have to know, and I have explained this to the board previously, that these numbers can and possibly will shift.
Why would the sale of the property shift?
I'm not saying it will. However, what if they don't get funded? What if they don't get their license? I mean, when people buy property, not that it happens all the time, but it is a possibility that a deal can fall through. And we would have to go back out to try to sell the property.
So we're still within the 60-day window, right, to close,
to
to
clo-
close
the
on the
closing.
sale. So
We are,
that's fluid for.
I do know that our realtor and the buyer has asked for a couple things, and I know Ms. Vanderbroek is working on that. I don't want to speak on that, so at our next meeting, I will have her update the board on that. I believe there was a request to extend something. However, I will have her put that in writing and get it to the board.
Yeah, so I'm curious why you've put the cost avoidance in there in the sale, because those are one-time cost savings. They're not recurring. So, so that's $2.5 million that really is not continuing. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, but we wanted to show it because those were considerations that the superintendent had to avoid any future cost.
Right.
So,
We're not maintaining that building.
Yes.
anymore, et cetera.
yes. Any other questions there?
Are we
To
done?
clarify, is this the end of the presentation?
Yeah,
We're
that's why I didn't
almost
want it,
there.
yeah.
Okay, so we're not
So we're
there.
not-
No.
Okay,
We're
so
not
then
I'd
we're
rather
holding
continue.
that.
Let us know when you're there.
That's where
okay?
I'm getting confused.
Yeah, I keep,
Yes.
I think you keep
That
thinking
was
this
Miss
is the-
Hannah.
No, it was a compliment.
Don't even do it. Don't even do it.
Okay, next slide. Okay, leadership by example. This was also a request, and so the superintendent is responding to a request by the board. And so leadership in action, how does that look? Again, we're going to repeat what we've said repeatedly throughout this presentation tonight. The areas that the superintendent has focused on, and that's for sure showing leadership by,
Slide.
next slide, please. Yes. So that is certainly aspects of leadership to make the tough decisions, especially when it relates to position reductions and making some cuts in historical spending. And so these are the areas that we've stated previously. But again, when we're talking about how she has shown leadership, she and her staff have shown leadership, these are the areas of focus. Next slide, please. So how is that modeled? It's modeled via transparency, the mere fact that it's being presented to the Board of Education and communicated with school leaders and department leaders, shared accountability across all levels within the district, as well as accountability for the Board of Education in terms of approving the recommendations of the superintendent, maintaining fiscal responsibility, making the appropriate cuts and revisions needed in order to address the needs of the district as well as the solvency of the district, protecting the interest academically and safety-wise for the students. Those are the priority and the focus areas that were previously discussed. Respectful communication, keeping the lines of communication open with the Board of Education and the community and staff members. Data-driven decisions and also community engagement. We are not required to host budget workshops, but because of transparency and open communication and wanting to make informed decisions, we have had, this is the third budget workshop, so that the community can have a voice in what the district does. Next slide. There was a recommendation to freeze administration raises. It is the recommendation of the superintendent that there should be a shared responsibility in addressing deficits within the district. It's approximately 150 administrators, and even a significant pay reduction for the administrators would have a nominal impact on addressing the deficit. I am personally aware of a period of time by which I made a recommendation to Mr. Godin and Dr. Batiste at that time to give the administrators a significantly lower raise over 2 or 3 years. And that was when we were in extreme financial difficulties. And that's a temporary solution. It's not a solution that is going to address a structural deficit. And so the recommendation that we have made to the superintendent, and I'm hopeful, and she has agreed with us, is that making the cuts to administration is not the solution. It is a Band-Aid, but it is not a viable solution to closing the gap. There is a recommendation that you're going to hear, okay? But just a blanket freeze for 1 year is not going to have a great impact. Okay, so we have recommendations that are coming up, not we, but the superintendent has those recommendations, because it came from her, recommendations that's coming up in the presentation. Next slide, please. The superintendent wanted us to show here what is the student to administration ratio. This information came from the report card, the state report card. And you'll see that Waukegan is in alignment with comparable school districts. So there's 129 to 1, 129 administrators to 1 student. So that's pretty much in alignment with,
Do we,
Opposite
the
129
flip that? Yeah,
students
students to one
to one
admin.
yeah, yeah, I said it very, thank you very much.
There's not
Thank you very
129
much.
adults behind each
Yes,
kid.
yes, yes, thank you. Student to admin ratio, thank you very
Just
much.
like-
Yeah.
It's a long
interrupted
night, I've
several
been standing here
times.
about 2 hours already. Yes, you get it. Okay, so next slide. All right, so we wanted to put numbers to it. We wanted you to see it. What the board approved at a previous board meeting is about $1.1 million in raises, including the superintendent's raise. It's in that number. Our total salary is approximately $184 million. So 1.1, even if we say $1.2 million of that $184 million is less than 1%. You're gonna wait till the end, Ms. Hannah?
Yeah.
I know, but will you let me finish that? So,
We're almost there.
it is the recommendation of the superintendent, and we concur with that recommendation, that compensation freezes should be in whole and not in part. That's the only way that we would have make a significant impact on closing the gap in the deficit. Okay? Next slide, please. So what is the superintendent's recommendation? Here you go, Ms. Hannah. Okay? Implement a comprehensive multi-year budget stabilization strategy that prioritizes reoccurring structural savings over one-time reductions. That's what we just said. Right. One-time reductions is not really going to do anything for you moving into 28, 29, 30, and beyond. We need to look at things that are costing us money this year and it's going up, right? And it's impacting the district. We need to look at healthcare contributions, those type things. We need to look at staffing levels. All of the things that we talked about today, those are where the greatest impact will be. Targeting a small group of individuals is not going to have a great impact, okay? Maintain the recommendation or what the Board of Education approved at a previous board meeting by allowing the administrators to retain the raise for the current year. However, it's there, Ms. Hannah. The superintendent and other contractual employees would be frozen in 28.
And
Can we wait?
But
Can we
wait,
finish?
Yeah, we've stated we were going to wait till the end. We keep interjecting, and then I also lose my train of thought.
I worry about my.
Okay,
We
so,
decided as a board that we were going to be respectful and allow people to present and wait.
so 28, freeze all salaries. That is the recommendation of the superintendent.
I do want to state, because I can see some feedback. I do believe this is an option here. I would like to see how this year goes and have more conversation about it. Because as of right now, we look like we're saving about 14 million. And having discussions with Gwen and Brian, we may even save more. And if we save more, this may not be the right course of action, right? But this is something that we are putting out there as, if we need to go down this road, this is some of our thinking, right? I believe it's too soon to just say we're doing this or we're doing that, because one, we don't know how much money we're receiving right now. We don't know any grants we may be getting. So these are just some variables that are just hanging out there that we're going to have more discussions surrounding as a board. The other component of that is that we're going to have more discussions around the budget throughout our board meetings, right? So that we're updating the board on where we're at. What does the outlook look like? What monies came in? What monies didn't come in? All of that. So this is going to be an ongoing process, and I believe either a monthly or every 2 months where we're sitting down and we're having these conversations. Thank you, Ms. Polk.
Okay. She want to continue to evaluate compensation and staffing. You've heard that as a thread throughout this presentation, as well as to identify operational efficiencies and then monitor financial performance. She just spoke to that, to constantly review what we're getting in and then what we're spending to make sure that we're in alignment, okay? Next slide, please. Financial sustainability. These are the key areas. The consultant had these on his slides. Instruction, student safety, special ed, bilingual, literacy, student achievement, socio-emotional, and then ultimately graduation. Those are the pillows, right? Those things that are important and protected by the superintendent in her decision-making. Next slide, please. What is it she wants to do in order to enhance revenue stream? Seek additional grants, maximize evidence-based funding, and grants, that's the categorical reimbursements, and then Medicaid reimbursements, okay? But then we also want to look at other revenue streams, partnerships, reaching out to our legislators, and then any other allowable local revenue sources. Next slide, please. Superintendent, you want to do this one?
Sure. Can we go to the next slide? So there's a number of questions posed here, and I believe a question earlier came up of when did we decide we were, I don't want to get into the amount, but that we were going to focus on closing that deficit spending. And in June, at an OSC meeting, I asked very specific questions to our Board of Education, and I believe on majority, but for one, there was consensus around it. And so as we go into this fiscal year, I'm sorry, Ms. Hannah, I'll let you go. On the number of questions about did we want to reduce the deficit spending, there was about 4 or 5, maybe 6 questions I asked the board specifically. Very direct questions.
Yeah. Oh.
It was at the June OSC meeting, so if you want to, I can send you the link so you can. Okay. And so as a result, there's some questions that we need to ask ourselves as a Board of Education. And I won't go through these individually, but I'm going to ask, as I know the board does homework even after the board meeting, to look over these questions, see where you stand on this in your moral core, because as we navigate this, there are going to be hard decisions that have to be made. And I need the board's direction on how we should proceed, so that we're not disrupting lives or causing panic for people and then maybe not following through with an initiative or an idea we had. I don't believe that's fair to our employees. And I don't believe it's fair to our employees. So we will take the direction of the board, but I do ask that you look through these questions. I think there's some solid questions here, and more for reflection and thought process on where you stand within this. Doesn't have to be decided today. As I said, we will be having more discussions around the budget, the direction we're going for the upcoming school year, even some workshops around this on what's important to us, what levers are we pulling, where are we saying is our North Star. And I know literacy, science reading and the new curriculum, that's been our North Star, right? And so we got to keep having those discussions. Next slide. And then, so here's the next steps. So we had our budget workshop today. You will see that this budget workshop has been different than some in the past. we built and grew upon what we presented from one workshop to the second workshop to the third workshop. And personally, I believe that's how the budget workshop should happen. We should keep adapting to the vision of the board and to what we hear from our stakeholders. I believe we did a very nice job of that. We even had Joe, who came in and presented on the national landscape, because so many times we're like, it's only in our district and we're feeling all this pressure. But nationally, districts across the country are struggling with finances, their budgets, and what levers are they going to pull with the rising cost of healthcare, the uncertainty of funding, the administration that is guiding, and the value of public education, and I can go on and on and on. But all those barriers that we face daily. So the budget inspection will be that 30 days that Mr. Lattimore talked about, August 20th through September 22nd. The public hearing will be September 22nd, 2026, with a recommendation for adoption by the administration on that same day. And then we continue to plan for the upcoming school year as we progress the school year of 2026 through 2027. Thank you.
And then the final slide is the superintendent's commitment. I'll go ahead and read it unless you want to.
I can read it. Our responsibility extends beyond balancing the fiscal year 2027 budget. Administration is committed to making the strategic decisions necessary to restore the district's long-term financial health, while ensuring every fiscal decision supports student success and preserves public trust. And I'll let you look over the strategic commitments.
We're available for questions. We're available for questions.
Next slide, please.
Question.
Questions.
Hey, we have a lot of hands up. Sam has been wanting to talk for a while. So we're gonna go first, who was next?
It doesn't.
Okay.
Okay, there's a couple things I want to know about the organizational chart. That's what we forgot. A current organizational chart, administrative organization chart.
That wouldn't have been in our budget workshop, but we can get that out to the board.
Well, I
and
had asked for that. I spoke with Nick about that.
Okay. Nick, can you please get that out to all of the board? Thank you.
And, okay, I'm gonna go backwards. Okay, in terms of the administrative savings, okay? 1,156,784. Yeah, where is it?
No, we went too far.
Yeah.
Keep going.
No, it was behind. No, it was back.
Go
The
back,
administrative
so
cut.
go back.
More?
Yeah, it was the administrative cut page.
Administrative cut page. Okay. No, that's not it.
She said we're going backwards, so I believe it's under the by example, right? The
Yeah,
leadership, the last
leadership
category.
by
So I was
example.
correct. We went too far. More. Yep. More. Even there.
Right there. Okay. Now, if you say that this $1 million plus the change with it, it's only going to be for this year, right?
We're proposing it for 28,
For 27, 28.
a freeze for 28. For the current year, the board approved a
26,
4%.
27, 28.
Yes, 27.
Next year.
Yes.
Okay, but everything else is being cut now. Reduction
Yes,
is being done now.
yes,
And so compounding, I think that's the word
yes,
that you use.
yes,
Compounding
yes,
each year
yes.
of this administration freeze. How much would that save us up to 2030?
So you're saying freeze administrators without freezing the other individuals, 27
say
through?
that.
Okay,
I
I'm trying to
said-
follow you.
Okay, the leadership by example.
Yes,
Freeze administrative raises.
yes,
So compound just this for the admin.
Compound that. The 26, 27, 27, 28, 28, 29,
yes,
29, 30.
yes.
Okay, so it would be more than $1.16 million
If we were,
if you were to do it.
Yes.
But that's not in the plan to do.
that is correct.
Well,
We're
why
we're
we leave-
we're
it-
presenting numbers that relate to the current year. None of the other numbers relate to what is going to happen in 28, 29, or 30. We're just simply giving you,
except the compounding.
yes. So if we're going to freeze the salaries for the administration and everyone else in 28, that could potentially be upwards of $9 million savings
Mr. Brittle, you heard
in
that?
28,
9 million.
approximately.
That's a good saving.
That's with all
Yes,
staff.
that's-
That's not just
That's all staff,
administration.
and that is the recommendation that the superintendent is looking at.
So we should do that for everybody up until 2030.
That's what I thought you said, and that's what I said. So you're looking at a possibility of freezing all staff for 4 years.
We won't have any staff left.
No.
Yeah,
I-
okay, I'm not talking about the hourly staff. Okay? And that's why I need to see, we, the Board of Education, needs to see the organization chart. Because the one that is posted, there's a whole lot of people. And there's the ones at the top, there's a whole row of others, then there's a whole bunch under them. Why can't those positions be collapsed, reduced, frozen, while we're freezing support staffs, counselors, well, not freezing, but reducing them, and the narrative that it's not going to touch the students. Because the ones up here, they don't touch the students. The ones in the schools touch the students.
One of the things that I want to point out is that the administration did a salary. You know where I'm going with that.
No, a salary what?
A salary structure where non-union personnel are frozen, and there's a number of non-union personnel who are frozen.
With that compensation study?
Yes.
That irresponsible, awful compensation study that will affect people's retirement. I understand you didn't have anything to do with it. That was the overpaid consultant that did that. Okay, and that's how come the people that are not in, that have left the district from our administration, that's why they either left the district and or went back into the classroom. Because they didn't want to have their retirements impacted. So that,
Yes, but I'm addressing that administration has been impacted because the salary structure did freeze salaries.
not
For-
the ones at the top.
Contracted.
There's the ones at the top, their salaries didn't get touched.
Well, I can't speak to that, but what I am speaking to is that different tiers of administrators fall within those 3 tiers of salary, and once they reach that cap, they're frozen. The other thing that I want to just bring to your attention is that while you're freezing the administrators' salaries, it's a issue of equity too if we do what you are proposing.
We don't have equity for the kids, so how we?
If we do what you are proposing, it is a matter of equity because the other unionized individuals are not frozen. So the gap between the administrators and the other groups is closing in. So you have to see what is happening. And so you build a system of inequity where you have, and I'm just using this as an example because I've not looked at this, right? But where you can have a principal or an assistant principal who is making less than a support staff.
What they freeze the salaries for then?
Huh? With what?
Why were the salaries frozen then?
Well, that's what we're talking about, that it wouldn't be ideal.
No, I'm talking about with the compensation
Oh.
study.
I,
Because that caps or basically freezes people's salaries. And the assistant principals, the principals, their salaries are gonna be frozen or capped.
I know, but tonight we're speaking about if the recommendation from the board is to freeze the administrators, that's not going to solve the problem. It creates a greater inequity, right? It's a one-time approval that's not going to have long-standing implications. We need to look at, or the recommendation that I'm making to the superintendent is that we look at something that is going to help the district to close the structural deficit.
Stop spending money.
Well, that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to reduce the amount of money that we're spending, but we have to do that strategically and intentionally. We have to do it based upon data and impact and needs. So those tough decisions must be made and it must be considered. Those discussions have to be had. And that's why we're having the discussion now. That's why we're standing at this lecture. That's why we spent hours in the back room there with the superintendent in her office talking about this stuff. And outside of my earshot, I'm sure she's having conversations with her exec team. So, I mean, these are the conversations that has to happen. We really don't have a choice. If we don't voluntarily make these decisions, the state is going to make us make them.
Okay, I'm gonna let Ms. Lensing speak. She's had her hand up for quite a while.
I have, some are going to be rapid fire and some
Yeah.
will be a little bit more. So hopefully this is rapid fire, or if you condense it as much as possible. So you're giving us the salary as a range of 80% to 85% of the budget. Why is it a
Yes.
range?
Because it fluctuates. It all depends on who's hired. Right now, it's so fluid, right? Because HR is processing new hires. You have a lot of teachers that transition out, retirements, a lot of things happen. So it depends on who comes in, who goes out, that sort of thing.
Okay. The reason I'm asking that
Yeah.
is that we're constantly hearing it's 80% of the budget.
Yeah.
And we approved a $22 million increase to our teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And it was 80% of the budget before we did that. And
Yeah.
it's still like the 80% after.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm asking, is
Yeah.
that like, okay.
Yeah.
And I think if we're going to do market value of our administrative staff with the study, it's fair that the teachers get a market value increase from the Board of Education in their contract. So I'm just expressing I'm exhausted with hearing we increase their salary. Like, yes, we did intentionally because they deserve it. I do want, one thing that's missing in here is legislative costs, right? There's no plan of action for how do we reduce the number of settlements or lawsuits levied against the district because of, employee relations or something happening. Workman's comp, I know that you can try to mitigate with trainings around safety and protocols and that sort of stuff, but that's going to happen. But I didn't see anything in here about paying out settlements to district employees for wrongdoing or not wanting to go through the legal process because it's going to be cheaper. So that's one area that I would like to see.
Okay.
I also want, when it comes to the categorical funding, so the grants, I want more transparency around that in terms of like, did we have to send money back? Are we managing those funds appropriately? Did we lose a grant because we're not doing that appropriately? Because to the point, we need to increase our revenue as much as possible. So that's a big area that we could be really pushing in terms of that. In section 3, it talked about protecting academic improvement initiatives. I want a segment in our ongoing meetings, whether it's quarterly or twice a year, on how these initiatives are going. Because, and like even tying back to the strategic plan, it's not we do it once and then it's just going. If we have something, I want more consistent information, because if we have academic programming that like we try to see if it works, if we're not constantly analyzing it, then we can't say it's not worth the funding. For contracts, I would like us to focus on a more outcomes-based contracting. I know the first CUBE conference that I went to, I know Mr. Riddle was in that presentation. I know prior board president, Mr. Ewing, was in there. I was in there, and I have not seen us transition to that. And if we have an outcomes-based contracting approach, anytime we're not getting the services that are contracted to be rendered to us, we get some money back. And I know that you have built in and made sure there's some safety nets, which is appreciated, but I think we need a more targeted effort because we need to hold people accountable because our dollars shouldn't go out the window. A couple more things. You said if our revenue goes up, then we can adjust and go up. I don't know if that's the approach we want to take if we're trying to minimize the deficit. I think we want to maintain the plan, and then that just continues to secure the reserve. So I just want to,
Fair comment.
okay, cool. And then for year 3, if a particular program is working in one school, then we look to replicate it in other schools. I'm not going to lie, that was frustrating to hear because I feel like I've been saying some similar things. If it's working, we should expand it to more of our schools. But the response I get is the principal is the lever of change. And that sounds like a philosophy shift. And that would be 3 years past when I started. So like 7 years later, it's like, oh, okay, now we're doing the things that board members were saying previously. So there's a bit of frustration around that, but I'm glad that's an intentional goal. If it works, it works. And then I want to know the impact of overtime reduction. So what does that mean? Like when we're cutting overtime, what is the impact going to be on a day-to-day school life? And the last thing I'll say is just tied back to what Ms. Hannah said. So, and I may not have the clearest picture, but I'm just going to give you my real-time feelings. When it comes to leadership by example, I want to know what's shared. Because the schools have lost staff, the initiative funding has been cut. We are increasing the classroom sizes with collapsing classrooms, and we're going towards what's contracted. So in business, they will scaffold the pay reductions so that those who are making more have more flex to be able to not receive their higher salary. And those that are lower on the totem pole, it's still an impact to them, but they're not struggling as much to buy groceries if we don't touch their salary. And when we talk about that salary study that happened, that salary cap, you said that administration is feeling it that way. From my understanding, that's based on market research. So it's not that like the board was punishing, it's just within the market, that's kind of what's paid for that position. So it wasn't dictated like we're punishing people by freezing that, it was the studies. So that's, to me, like right now, it feels like the schools are feeling the heaviest impact. I'm not seeing what the administration is feeling, because even if we go into the positions that were reduced, we didn't have the breakdown of what was cost avoidance and cost reduction, but we did that for the other positions because a lot of those positions were vacant. And so they collapsed into others. So that's more the avoidant concept, not the reduction concept.
That's fair.
So I will say, I'll end on a compliment, because I think this presentation is what I as a board member was looking for when we talked about goal 3 from the prior superintendent goals, where it talked about a comprehensive review of recommendations for the long-term fiscal solvency within the district. This is what we were expecting to have. That way, we're not having conversations in June, July, talking about cutting staff immediately in the next year. So I really appreciate the amount of work that went into this. It is very detailed and thorough. To Ms. Fabian's and everyone's point, a lot of hard decisions are going to need to be made. Those are just my initial reactions to the presentation.
Thank you. Ms. Fabian and then Mr. Riddle.
So I know one of your commitments that you stated was public trust. And so I just want to make a recommendation because I want to prevent a false narrative. One of the things that Mr. Joe, I forgot his last name already, alluded to was, the staff and the cuts. And you stated this as well, Ms. Polk, that you can arguably say that some of those cuts are going to impact student services, right? Same thing with some of our programs. Some of those programs will impact student services. And so we need to stop saying that we're going to stop cutting programs or items that are going to directly impact student services, because that is a false narrative. We need to clarify. If it does not have a return of investment, then it needs to be cut. So for example, and I was in some of those principal meetings, you had a student club that a teacher wanted to do and was spending, let's say, $10,000 on that club. It's a hypothetical, but only 5 kids were showing up. Is it fair to spend that much money for 5 kids when we can utilize that money for a broader program that serves more children, right? So those cuts do need to be made when we're looking at return of investment. So I just want to be clear when we're sending out messaging so that our families understand that it might have been their student that was in that program and that program gets cut, and they're going to come back saying, well, you said you weren't cutting any programs that directly impacted students. So I just think we need to be very careful with what we say and what we promise, so people aren't coming back with a confused understanding. And one prime example is the Best Center, which I have been advocating for since before I got on the board. And it was something that was promised before this building was even built out. And we kept saying, we're going to do it, we're going to do it, we're going to do it, we're going to do it. And I kept saying, when, and where's that plan? And now we're saying, well, we can't do it because now we're not in the fiscal position to do it, and it's not sustainable. And so when we make drastic changes like that, where you've been communicating out for years that you have this goal in mind and then it doesn't happen, we also need to communicate why that goal has changed. So the same thing with the Welcome Center. We were told it was going to be, professional development center, and then one day out of the blue, we see it up on the market. I don't disagree with the fact that it needed to go up on the market. What I'm saying is we need to be clear in our communication when those goals change, so that it doesn't feel like the administration out of the blue is just like, you know what, just sell it. Like, we don't feel like dealing with it, right? then people have a more transparent view of what we're doing and why we're doing it, instead of hearing the same story and then it being switched up on them. I just feel like that's where we get that public distrust, and it feels very disingenuous. So that's my comment on that moving forward. The second piece is, I know we've also committed to doing an app study, and we have a lot of contracts with a lot of our computer applications. And we were told we really couldn't get details because we still had some of those contracts, that we were still in those contracts, and we didn't want to kind of spread the panic and fear or all of that. I personally don't need an in-depth detail of what apps we've eliminated or why. I just want to know was that study completed, and then what was the total savings, because I know there have been a lot of contracts that I personally know that we're not doing anymore that are a huge cost savings. So if we could get that also added in, is how much did we save by doing that study? The second question is just coming out of, the second question is coming out of, again, what Mr. Joe said. If you could also give us the number of ESSER positions. So were there any positions that we still have in the district that were primarily began by and funded by ESSER that are still maintained? And I know there has to be, because we increased so much over the years. And I know we didn't put a lot of our money into the staff for ESSER. I know we put it into operations and facility. I understand that. But if that could give us, if we could just have a quick audit, again, I don't need like full details.
We'll come back to you.
But just have here's how many positions and what's the plan for those positions. Are they still needed? Are we looking at cutting those as well?
You gotta. And you're saying something that I was under the impression that we didn't do.
We did
And the
not.
Only,
I think that was
and
the
the
clarification.
only,
But we
The
had some
only
contracts
thing-
that started that way.
That's right.
okay, but the only staff were the teachers with that ESSER money.
So I don't think we paid teachers, but that's what we need, the
That
clarification.
contract.
Yeah,
Funds to
I think that's
That's
I think the
exactly-
clarification that needs to be made.
Yeah,
right?
let me kind of respond to that, and you're absolutely correct. We were intentional in not putting personnel, which were reoccurring costs, in ESSER because we knew ESSER was going away. We put one-time cost in there. When we had several $1 million, we shifted some costs that would have been paid by local into ESSER to preserve some of our local funds, but it wasn't because it was a new hire. It was simply custodians, maintenance individuals, I think we moved in there to pay them, and it was strategic. So we were conscious of the fact that we couldn't sustain it if we hire all of those individuals and put it in there. We did not put reoccurring facility costs. That was one of the things Ms. Hannah, when we were over in the Trapp Auditorium, I don't want to put a lot of capital into this money. So by board direction, we only put $18 million towards capital improvement. So it was very strategic. It was presented to the Board of Education on several occasions. It's posted on the district's website. It was in the ESSER plan that we had to submit to the state of Illinois, and so we're very proud of that. And let me say this: it was also about the grants. Someone said it. I think it was you, Ms. Lindsay. We just completed a state audit, and kudos goes to the business office, the entire district, but Mr. Villalobos, who worked extremely hard. In the absence of one of our critical pieces, which was Mr. Chen, who normally handled these audits. But Mr. Villalobos did an outstanding job. Out of the $84 million, I believe, we were audited for, we got 2 findings. And I was like, whatever. It was for about $76, and it was for paying
Gratuity.
gratuity,
Gratuity, I thought.
tips, gratuities for taxes of food. And I tried to fight that, but then when I looked in the statute, I knew it was nothing to fight about. So I'm like, Mr. Villalobos, $270 over $80 million, we'll take that. So the district did a great job from the grant managers, from Mr. Luosa, Mr. Villalobos, Mr. Lattimore, and the rest of the business office, as well as everyone else. So kudos to the Board of Education for how you managed, seriously, kudos to the Board of Education for how you managed that. Because hopefully, like our name is in the Department of Education for the last audit, hopefully, and we didn't have any exceptions then, hopefully for $270-some, we'll get it on the Department of Education website again. So kudos to the Board of Education and Superintendent.
I also want to say thank you because I will tell you, there were districts that were being called by ISB because they had so much money still left on the table. Is that better? Yeah. All right. Now I feel like I'm yelling at everyone. But yes, so thank you for that. The other couple of questions are, I know you put a little piece of this in there about facility rental, but also looking at maximizing space. We have buildings that have half the number of students that they were intended to hold. Have we also looked at, or are we going to look at renting out facility space to our trusted community partners, even during the day as offices? And I think we're going to have to get into some uncomfortable conversations and talk about what does even collapsing schools look like when we have 4,000 less students.
So yes, the answer is yes. We are looking at space utilization. We are already studying those reports. That's not for this budget. This budget is for 26, 27. As we go into this year, you're going to hear a lot of those conversations where we're coming back with utilization reports and a plan supporting that. So that's also something that's not in here because those are forward conversations that we will have for the upcoming budget.
Thank you. And then just lastly, I just want to caution our board about moving too fast, right? I recently read an article from Chicago Public Schools who decided to RIF a number of students, and because of all the backlash, staff.
Yep.
Well, students have left, and that's why they're cutting staff, I guess, right? But it's late, you guys, I'm so sorry. But reading that report, right, and I understand we have to make tough decisions, and nobody wants to RIF people. It's impacting people's livelihoods. I completely understand that. However, the prime example there is their board decided to backpedal because of the public outlash. Right. And now they did the study that they may only be able to function to January, and then they're out of money. Yeah. And so I 100% understand how difficult these decisions are and how much they impact livelihoods. And so I just also want to echo what I said in the last meeting, what Ms. Lensing just said again, about having conversations early enough so that we are able to keep as many people, move them around into positions to save where we can save, but also give them time to look for another job and not a short window of notice, like school's about to start, but by the way, you're not going to be back at your school, right? Because even if we are saving those people, they have it in their heads they're going to go to a specific building, to a specific culture with their specific students, and that's what they're looking forward to. And then we didn't allow a lot of time for them to process that before school started. So I just want to say, again, let's move the ship slowly. We can't just rush and say, we're going to cut all of this all at once or do all of this all at once. I think we need to continue to do what we're doing and have these conversations and these studies so that we don't end up backpedaling and hurting ourselves even more. And that's all for my.
Mr. Riddle.
Okay. Wow. Thoughtful considerations, thoughtful comments from our board members, and wow, what a presentation. I really do want to thank the superintendent and all of your staff, Ms. Polk, that worked so hard on this presentation. And as the superintendent, or as the last slide said, balancing a budget is not just balancing a budget. It's doing it thoughtfully so that, as our children aren't hurt, are impacted as little as possible. We know that they're going to be impacted by the decisions this board makes. And as Ms. Fabian just said, unfortunately, the school board in Chicago failed the kids and the community by what they did, because schools can't operate without money, and that school is in terrible situation. And the kids are going to be impacted when they don't have enough money to operate. I would have liked to have seen bigger cuts this year. But it looks like we're not going to be able to do it. But I see what's happening. We have a plan now, so that we're not using up our reserves and finding ourselves in a situation, God forbid, that would be like Chicago, where we don't have enough money to operate. We need reserve money and we have to borrow again. We're not going to be in that situation. I would like to just, as we bring this budget, as we dip into our reserves less and less. It will have 52 million we're projecting at the June of 68, 51.5 million in 69, and then we're going to start building back up a bit. And I'm not sure how we were building back up, whether that was projection of 57.6 million in 2030. And that's because of
Reduction in expenditures and increase in revenue.
And
Yes.
projecting increases in revenue. We're
Yes.
hoping that both taxes continue to go up,
Yes.
and the other revenue source we have is the evidence-based budgeting.
Yes.
Will continue to go up.
Yes.
Now, I know there's a lot of variables in there. Medicaid could end up going back on the districts. PRS, we might have to spend more there. There's all kinds of variables that we have to deal
Right.
with. But we're projecting that by 2030, we would have, or even by the end of June of 29.
With those assumptions that we
With those
provided.
assumptions.
Yes.
And let me just ask the question, with 51 million, that gives us enough reserves to meet our needs, is what you're projecting?
No.
It doesn't give us enough that we wouldn't have to go out and borrow, would we?
Not at that point. It all depends on what our expenditures are. And I have to be honest. If we continue to manage based upon the strategies that were submitted to you today, then we would continue to build the cash reserves, other reserves.
Well, okay.
So let me finish, because that's an important question. None of us wanted to go out for those
TAWs.
TAWs. So you're not projecting in here having to go out for any TAWs.
Not with what we presented to you tonight.
Okay, and with, as far as ISB goes, we're keeping them off our backs. They're not going to be looking at what we're doing because they feel we're managing properly and we have enough, that 90-day reserve that we needed to have.
No, go ahead. I didn't catch the question, but go
Okay.
ahead. I'll listen.
That's what we're going to monitor. I don't
Okay.
want to give you an absolute answer because we will have to periodically monitor the cash reserves. There's a lot of factors because just because a budget is presented to the Board of Education doesn't mean that all of the budget is going to be expended. It's quite the contrary.
Right.
If you look at what has historically been presented to the Board of Education as a budget, that is not what the actuals really are, right?
Right.
So in years past, I would present to the Board of Education, some of you may recall, 3 scenarios. And that was intentional. What is probable, likely, and extremely optimistic. So we take a more conservative approach in budgeting now, because we're looking at the landscape and we just don't have the flexibility, right? Because back then, I need to say, back then, over all of the 9 funds, we had $28 million. Just imagine, we had 28 million, we had 32 million, right? And then we started building it up. There was a lot of, and I always go back to that time because we have to understand where we were and the strategies that we used back then in order to not go back where we were, okay? So we started looking at prioritization. We started looking at return on investment. We started looking at trend data in terms of what the state was doing. And at that time, I know Mr. Rodriguez and Ms. Hannah remember the state was prorating our money, right? They were prorating our money. We were entitled to a lot of money with general state aid. And when I say a lot of money, it wasn't a lot of money. Because back then, general state aid was only giving us 40 million, 60 million, not 120, not 130, not 140. They were giving us 40 and 50, 60 million dollars, very little. And even then, we were able to strategize and bring the district out of a financial hole.
And we
so,
have been in for 16 years.
Okay, and one of the things that we have to look at, you know, it's a lot of things that we want to do, and we have done, which is admirable, you know, to increase compensation. But you have to look at it. If you increase compensation to the magnitude that we did, and we told you that when you did it, if you do this, you might not be able to do that. And so here we are. We're facing that decision. We decided to do that, so it's some other things we can't do. Now, we also knew, and I have to go back, that predates some of you who are on the board and many of you who are in the room, go back to when we negotiated that teacher contract in 2014. Okay? Let's go back to 2014. I know, you were in the classroom at the time. Yes, so let's go back to 2014. Let's go back there, okay? We had a broken salary schedule.
And we fixed
It was broken.
Absolutely.
And I went to the University of Hard Knocks. Because if you remember, I transitioned
We all did.
into my current role during that time. And we had 6 negotiations. And I spent long hours studying what was happening with salaries. Now, remember, we were in a tight place back then. We didn't have any money in the bank. We were negotiating with 6 agreements. We just came off, because remember, we negotiated with the teachers, and 30 days later, we negotiated again, because we had a salary reopener in 2013. We gave raises then. And then we negotiated a full contract in 2014. The salary schedule, as I examined it, had huge pockets. You know, it had pockets in the middle and at the end. We didn't have money to fix the salary schedule, because before you even started talking, you were putting 10 at the time. And that number grew. But at the time, I briefed the board that to fix that salary schedule before you even negotiate, it's $10 million you're putting on the table. Period. Because over the years, when the teachers were given the money to self-place the money in the schedule, they placed it on different cells.
At the top.
That's what happened. That's what we had. That's what we had. And so we said, okay, we can't afford to fix it. We cannot afford to fix it. So we're going to tier it. And that's what we did. We tiered it. where you didn't get an individual who was in a good pocket, I say a good pocket, didn't
They could
get
get 10%.
a 3% raise and a 7% step. So they got a 10% increase. And that was all throughout the schedule. So we were spending a lot of money
0.5%.
giving raises, right? So we capped it for those people that went from 1 to 22, was it? 1 to 22. We said, okay, we want to put more of the money on the individuals who are coming in the district so that we can attract people. Right? So we put 4% on those levels so that we could put more money in the entry-level people. And then longevity, which was like 22, right? We gave them a little bit more because we know that they had been in the district. And then those below, we gave them a lower percentage, like a 2% or 3%. So what did that do? It minimized the increases, right? We did that for 12 years. 12 years. Think about it.
Wow.
We maximized, we gave the increases to those who deserved it. We gave 4%, 3%, 4.5%. You see, they got raises, but they didn't get 7, they didn't get 10, they didn't get 12, right?
28.
28, they didn't get it, right? And so then in 2024, we said we wanted to go back to a salary schedule. So when I hear the board or the community or someone say, you put 30 million, no, we did. We fixed the schedule first.
Right.
You put $14 million on the table first before you even start talking. And I knew that. I said it in 2014. So when 2024, we put that on the table first. Now we negotiate. So that 20 million or 30 million wasn't really 20 or 30 million, right? So we have to be clear about that. So then that becomes your base. It doesn't go away. That becomes your new base.
Right.
And so in all of the years after that, the salary is increasing. The salary is increasing. And then also, we did the same thing, not really because of anything. Legally, we had to increase the base amount for WPSS. We can't call them WPSS. We had to increase the base amount for the paras. That was a legal requirement.
Right.
Yeah, to me too.
And so we couldn't do a tier. We had to do an increase across the whole schedule. See what I mean?
Yeah.
So if we increase the entry level to the minimum salary by law, that means all of the other people got a huge raise too. So that's why it was a 28% for the whips, because we couldn't do it any different because of the entry level salaries. So that's why negotiating is very important. And this is one of the things the superintendent said and mentioned today about healthcare.
Yeah.
So Ms. Poe,
If I can mention about the healthcare before it leaves my mind.
Okay, we're gonna try to give everybody a chance to talk.
Yes.
I know Mr. Vuk, I think Ms. Briscoe wanted to say something. Mr. McBride, did you want to say something?
Can I finish with the healthcare?
Oh, I'm sorry,
That's
I'm
okay.
sorry. Okay, go ahead.
With the healthcare, we're spending $32 million in healthcare. Okay, when I go to training sessions, when I go to conferences, trust me, I'm not going for leisure. I'm going to hear what people are doing across the country,
Right.
what other CFOs are doing. And a lot of them are changing their plans because our plan is a good plan. It's very good. We pay the bulk of employee health costs. If you look at the contributions, we pay the bulk of it.
Yeah,
For single coverage
yeah.
alone, it's about $22,000. And employees, we used to have 100% contribution for single coverage. The district is picking all of that up. Now we said 0.32%, not 32%, 0.32% of a person's salary they're contributing for health care. So how much is that? We're not getting much.
No,
The
no.
district is paying all of that.
So we need to change that, is what you're saying.
Yes, Mr. Moulton and I and HR met with, who is that? What's that company? USI. And we're hopeful.
Good.
Superintendent told us it's something we need to address, and we're optimistic and happy and eager to do that.
Right.
Because now, not only that $30 million, but they told us, what, 25% increase in PPO? That's absurd.
Well, that is.
Yes.
Yeah, that is.
That's millions.
Right, right.
Right? So those are the factors that we have to contend with. Those are the things that we have to look at as we're moving forward. And that's why the budget is a fluid process. It's a fluid document. It's not something that's going to be stagnant. We have to, and we've used this term before, we have to pivot. We have to pivot. We have to make those decisions or we won't survive it.
All right, all right.
That's just, I'm sorry for being so blunt and forward, but it's the reality of what we're dealing with.
We need you to be blunt and forward.
Thank you,
Right.
sir.
As I said earlier, you're the voice of reality.
Yeah, and I think, our board needs to listen to the experts. That's what, Cook County didn't do. You guys really have worked on this, you know what you're doing, and to some extent, we have to trust that this is, because we see what has happened in the past. We know you're working toward the health of this district, and to continue to budget for everything that we need, including keeping some of our reserves, so that we don't have to, we're not in trouble.
We don't want to be.
No, we don't want to be in trouble.
All right, we're going to give Mr. McBride and Ms. Ramirez a chance to speak, and then we have a couple of people in the audience that want
Yes.
to talk also. Mr. McBride?
Well, sitting here, Mrs. Pope, and I'll wait till she get done.
sorry.
No, you done?
I'm done.
Okay.
Give me a break.
Again, your presentation I thought was well thorough and planned out.
Yeah.
I mean, after sitting in some of the budget hearings myself, I just want to say, since I've been sitting here, it reminds me of the sitcom All My Children. And at the end of it, to be continued. So I'm going to just leave it like that.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. Ms. Ramirez, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Yes, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, not at this moment.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Mr. Vukovic?
Yes, good evening. You were talking about the healthcare cost, and I think if you're going to lead by example, that the administration should be paying the same amount for healthcare as the employees do. You have some administrators in this district, it's costing the taxpayers $38,000 a year in family health care. And that's before a 25% increase. And, some of the people that were laid off last week, I was in this room when it was full. The two people at the very bottom, they were making less than $30,000 a year. They don't even take district health insurance. So, that's not much of a savings in that category. So if you're going to have the management, be equal. Take the same as all the rank and file do. Superintendent was talking about going to try to make some cuts in administration. And I think that's just a start. You need to look at that chart and be more like Rockford and Elgin and have that percentage of the ratio of students to administrators. Those are two very good school districts. One of them was run by the now superintendent of schools for the state of Illinois. So, use that as an example. If we've lost 4,000 students in the last 10 years, we don't need as many administrators. So I think that's where you're going to have your big bang for the buck, not cutting paraprofessionals. That's not there. And on that note, I was in this room last week when you all took, or some of you took that action that affected these people. And I heard the superintendent say that she was going to meet with them starting the next day to work on getting their jobs. But then I'm hearing tonight that she hasn't had time to do that yet. So I would hope that gets done right away because those people were expecting that.
Yeah, I don't believe I said the next day. What I said was that I would work individually with each person because a RIF letter has to go out to those individuals. I cannot start working with them until they receive their letter. I also am going to work with them with the union president, which is Sam, who actually just messaged me right now of when we will start this, and it is scheduled to start this week.
Mr. Zabecki.
So I got a couple things besides, I was going to say some of the stuff that Ray said, but I'm going to go back to something the superintendent said after her first year in the interview. And I've told you guys to watch that interview. When it comes down to lead by example, you made a statement in that interview that said administrative assistants. So if it ever came down to what we're going through today and making cuts and stuff, you guys would share administrative assistants, share secretaries. That's a lot of savings within that department. But we don't see nothing up here in that department at all. Those cuts. And you made that statement. When it came down to it, you guys would share secretaries and everything else in administration. That's a big cost savings. When we talk about all this, and I said it last time, you guys gave the superintendent a 4-year extension on our contract. Why wasn't it renegotiated? We knew we were going to need to make cuts. Why wasn't it renegotiated? Where's the bang for the buck back? We look at the Illinois State Report Card the last 10 years. It's pretty level, very low in those scores. Where's the leadership by example? And I've been saying that this board does need to come up with a policy. Ms. Fabian just said it a little while ago, return of investments. Like when we're sending administrators and staff, it don't have to be administrators, but even staff in that. Where's the return on the investment for these conferences? When some of these administrators go on 4 or 5 conferences in a year, we pay a lot of money out, and it takes time for the training of the other staff and that they're supposed to be bringing back, but then that administrator leaves within that year. There needs to be a board policy. If you go on a conference and that if you leave in a certain amount of time, they should have to repay the district back because where's the return on the taxpayers' investments for the kids? A lot of these programs that you guys bring in and this administration brings in, we started with principals. How many times just this year did we start and do all this training for the principals, and how many of those principals left the district? So we spent a lot of money on training those principals, and they're no longer here. They left. That's a lot of money wasted. Curriculum. How much money have we spent in curriculum? Didn't even go the 3-4 years on, $2, $3, $4 million, and then we take the curriculum and throw it in the garbage and start over because we didn't like the numbers, how they're doing it in the first year or two. We get rid of it, we throw it in the garbage. So a lot of it's on this board. You guys sit up here and just vote yes, 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 yes on a lot of this spending, but then like we said, it's the people in the schools that take the hit. When it's, oh, no, we spent too much, we're wasting all this, we're throwing stuff over in storage in the garbage because now it's expired or rats got into it or whatever. You guys got to take a blame for a lot of this because you guys are the ones that sit up here and vote yes, yes, yes on all this money, all these contracts, the outside people coming in. That's on you. You guys got to look at it as a district and the taxpayers. We want to do, I know we haven't been talking about it, but this 1% sales tax increase, with all the cuts and everything else and spending, that's going to have a big impact if that passes on the families in this district that are already struggling, that pay some of the highest taxes in the state as it is in Waukegan. That's all I got.
Thank you,
that I
Mr.
can remember for
Zabecki.
now.
I've got,
Ms. Hannah, then.
yeah,
Ms.
I
Alonso,
just want to
and Ms.
know,
Lindsay.
okay, we didn't get to the the deficit for this school year, right? Huh? No, what I'm saying is we are still in a deficit for this current year. Okay. We're going to be in a deficit according to the presentation. We're going to be in a deficit in 2028, 27, 28.
And 29.
And in 28, 29. So we're still deficit. We're still pulling from the reserve.
Correct.
Now, you know, Ms. Polk, well, I'm going to direct this to Mr. DeWosa. You know you cannot keep deficit spending.
That is correct.
We don't have lunch fees anymore. See, all of those things used to be there. They're not there anymore. Those are that's lost revenue.
We can bring that back. I mean, that's not an option that we cannot bring back. At one point, and I don't even remember what year it is because of the time, and I would go back and maybe Ms. Polk can elaborate. At one point, it was the will of the board that we were not pursuing those fees or collecting those fees. And so as a result, we've laid off of that. That doesn't mean we can't go back to that, but we did ease off of that.
Well, when I talk about fees, I'm talking about tuition. That's more of a legal thing.
You mean student fees?
Student fees.
Yes, ma'am. We as a result, and I don't, like I said, I don't remember the year, but it was the sentiment of the board that we did not want to pursue student fees, and so that fell off the table.
Tuition.
Well,
we
There's
can't charge
two
tuition.
different things.
It's a public sector.
Yeah, there's two different things.
Yes. Yeah. So in
Okay.
the public sector, your tuition is the school fees.
No, we do
No?
charge tuition for those students that are outside of our
Oh,
district who choose
those
to come in.
individuals.
Yes.
Understood.
But
Yes.
how many of
Okay,
them
and
are there
then
really?
one
It's not
more
that
thing.
many.
Right.
Yeah.
That's not.
One more thing, and then I'm done. The amount of money that we began with Learn, wasn't that 1.3
It was low.
million?
Yeah, and the reason why is because
No,
GSA
no.
was so low. Once we went to evidence-based, they got a larger per pupil rate. But yes, we're given a large amount of money to Learn Charter School.
And the big factor on that, even though it's evidence-based,
Yes,
is the number of students
Learn has.
that Learn has began accumulating.
Yeah.
And I've watched the correlation.
Mm-hmm.
Learn gets more money, our enrollment goes down.
Is it a 1-to-1?
Look, the money goes where the kids go.
I'm not saying that.
No,
that's not
I'm
happening.
just saying. The money goes where the kids go. And that's a conversation that the Board of Education and the superintendent needs to have. Why are the students or the parents taking students out of Waukegan School District? We need to have that conversation. And we have not had it. We've just been watching the results. And that means equates to lost revenue.
Well, you remember when Learn submitted their application, they said that they would have a growing enrollment. So they campaigned to get the students to attend their school. And the amount of money that that what gives me heartburn. The amount of money that they're getting is based upon our expenditures.
Yeah.
That is the kicker here. Is based
Also,
upon.
it don't have anything to do with students leaving our district and going.
I won't say that, but what I am saying is that Learn is getting money based upon our expenditures. They look at our per pupil expenditures to establish how much Learn gets. The other thing that kind of bothered me, and that was one of the things that we said when we fought Learn's application, and that is that we can't particularly reduce the number of staff in our schools because the students are coming from that particular location. We have to have the teachers in that school or that school or that school. So we can't make the adjustments so readily like Learn is. And then Learn is getting a lot of outside supports, right? Which our district cannot pivot like that. And so I wish, and I'm speaking just from Gwen, and that's what I said way back then when we were fighting that application for Learn. I said it's not fair to our district who's trying to educate our students that we're having to give so much money to a charter school.
Okay, we have Fabian, Ms. Lindsay, Mr. Riddle, and then we're going to call it quits.
Yes.
I'm going to try to be really quick. Number one, I did want to thank the community that did come out. I know we have some frequent flyers that are consistent about being here, and so I appreciate the fact that they came out and stayed so late. But I also want to, again, words matter, and to say that we're cutting staff simply to save money, I think is also erroneous. To say we're cutting paras just because we want to save a couple of bucks, that's not it. There's a lot of work and planning that goes around it to make sure that we have staff for the needs of our students, and that we're not overstaffed, or that we don't have, a job description that does not match the need of our school community. Because it's not just about let's cut all these people to save a buck, and that's not. I just want to make sure that's not lost on everyone, because that's what it feels like and it sounds like. And that's not what I agreed to. I agreed to let's restructure to make sure that we are properly staffed for our students.
Thank you, Ms. Fabian. Ms. Lindsay.
I think as we look at our upcoming tasks, the one-to-one technology, I think for me personally, we need to reconsider at what age we bring that in, right? Because it is, and there's research out there that it's actually not helping our younger students. I used to have a computer lab, cool, but did I have a one-to-one screen? No. So I think we need to start looking into that. I don't need an answer right now, but with the cost of our food, I know we have a cost savings there. Does that still support the break meals that we were doing with Sodexo? Like, was that added into the calculation? So if we can get a follow-up on that. And I know there was a lot of discussion about salary savings, but I don't know if it's possible to get an overall benefit savings, right? Because when you save on salary, there are the additional benefits that come with it, so that there's that trickle down. And with that being said, I should just say the benefit impact itself, because we are paying penalties as a district. Whether it's to, the state directly or through the pension, those penalties are occurring. And so I know the community is pretty frustrated about that. The last thing I'll say is that we've been experiencing the enrollment reduction sitting around 13,500 for the past 3 years, and I think this is going on our 4th year. So this right-sizing the district is long overdue. And to the point that I think it was Mr. Riddle said, we need to trust the experts. that's what we've been doing, right? IASB has been saying to, really trust your administration with their recommendations. But right now, it does seem that the board needs to push back a little bit. I think given just in light of Mr. Sebecki's comments, is that this is something that's been a plateau number for the past several years, and we're just looking at it now. And I, as a board member, take responsibility because I didn't push on that. But it is something that I know some of our partnerships are looking at as well, student enrollment numbers. So leveraging some of the like Boys and Girls Club or Waukena College, or having some real strategic conversations with them to see what sort of gaps they're willing and able to step up for, because they get outside funding, as nonprofits. So like really kind of pulling in and really being a true village and collaborating, I think is the big focus right now. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Yes. I want to thank the superintendent for this, and the finance department for their strategic recommendation. And I would ask all the board members to look at it. And I wonder if it would be helpful if we would possibly change some of it, but also in an upcoming meeting, vote on it as a resolution. And the second point of it, the second point of the 5, I think is very important. From what we've heard in the community, salaries matter, and they matter to all of us. And, I can go along, I guess, with the superintendent, with the admin salaries and with what Ms. Polk said, that, that disadvantages some of the admin who might be making less than some of the people they supervise. But this second point says that they will, maintain the approved fiscal. Well, first off, we'd be approving the multi-year stabilization strategy, which I think is really important. I think the district needs to look ahead and continue to monitor this. The superintendent said too, the board would be updated regularly. I would hope that's, monthly on how we're doing. If some other cuts are being made this, or advised this year, how we're saving some money. But then the second point is to implement a district-wide salary freeze for everybody. And I heard Ms. Polk say that would save $9 million. That would be next year. And I think that action should be taken by this board this year. Okay, because that's going to say something to everybody. It's going to say that yes, salaries matter, and also the salaries across the board. So that means that those who are not making very much money, okay, they didn't get a big increase.
We've already started the fiscal year.
But everybody, if you freeze the salaries, 4%, for instance, across the board is what we kind of average, we've been giving annually. That's across the board. That means somebody who's making an upper echelon is not getting 4%. We're saving more money for that person's salary than we are for the person who's on a lower echelon. So I think the board should look at this. I think we should debate it. And I think my recommendation would be that we may want to modify some of this strategic recommendation, but that we approve it in a forthcoming meeting. Because the strategy, it includes the multi-year strategy, and it would include, and people would know that
I would caution,
we
'cause
are
we've already
serious,
started.
and that implementation of saving money, $9 million is a good amount to be saving next year in our budget. So anyway, that's my thoughts. Thank you for all you've done tonight. You've done a fabulous job with presenting. I think everybody's tired, and I guess I'm the last person. Maybe the board president's got some things to say.
Well, I'm not going to say a lot, but I just want to thank everybody who came out tonight to participate in this budget workshop. Thank you to all the staff who stuck around late night to be with us. Thank you to the superintendent for all the hard work that she's done in spearheading this effort to begin to reduce our expenditures. Glenn Polk, Brian Luosa, Andy Lattimore, all of you who have been so diligently involved in working to bring about these very important moves that we have to make. And I want to also thank the board for your determination in being partners with the district in confronting and dealing with the financial dilemma that we're facing. And with that, I would like to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by
Second.
Mr. Lejeune, second by Ms.
Lensing.
Lensing. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned at 9:45.
Superintendent?